Welcome to Back of the Rack, a gaming videocast about games long neglected and not respected, games that everyone's heard of or hated, or no one's heard of and loved. We play the games in between the essentials and the unwanted, but mostly, we play what we want on this podcast. Thank you for listening on podcast platforms or watching on YouTube, which we consider to be the optimal way to experience our content. Join our Discord where you can talk with us and others about Back of the Rack games. And make sure to like and comment on our videos and leave good reviews on the podcast feeds. Your feedback and engagement is the fuel that keeps us going. We hope everyone watching and listening is doing great, and we thank you for joining us today on another episode. Starting off, we will introduce this month's game with the scripted segment giving you all the details, and then we will go into our unscripted thoughts about the game shortly afterwards. I'm Sondi, and with me always is Bendezzer, so without further ado, enjoy.
Developed and published by Squaresoft, Parasite Eve is a science fiction horror role-playing game released for the PlayStation 1 on September 9th, 1998 in Japan and September 10th, 1998 in the US. It is the first M-rated title to be released by Squaresoft and a sequel to the novel of the same name written by Hideaki Senna. Parasite Eve was developed in California in collaboration with Electronic Arts, marking the company's first American and Japanese development collaboration. Parasite Eve places you in the role of Aya Brea, an off-duty NYPD officer meeting a blind date on a snowy Christmas Eve at Carnegie Hall. Aya and her date are there for an opera, one she won't soon forget. As they watch the show, the actress on stage locks eyes with Aya, and suddenly the cast on stage spontaneously combusts. The audience, growing panicked by the perceived pyrotechnics, suddenly realizes that this isn't part of the show, and themselves ignite into flames without explanation. Aya watches powerless and confused as everyone but her and the actress are engulfed in flames. With the only sight being that of charred corpses, Aya pulls out a handgun from her purse and moves toward the stage where she last saw the actress, who would be the only other survivor. Aya soon learns the actress's name is Melissa, who informs Aya that she is immune to combustion. Melissa begins to transform into a flying creature named Mitochondria Eve and disappears into the sewers after Aya battles her. This leaves Aya, and by proxy, the player, with more questions than answers, setting into motion the events of the game. Parasite Eve is split up into 6 days and follows Aya after the events at Carnegie Hall. As her, Daniel, a veteran officer, and Maeda, a Japanese scientist, chase leads about Eve's whereabouts all around Manhattan Island. Players are given the ability to visit places around Manhattan like Central Park, St. Francis Hospital, and the NYPD, the latter acting as a sort of home base. Here, players can save their progress, store items, and upgrade weapons with permits that are given throughout the story. Players traverse each location with pre-rendered backgrounds and a fixed perspective akin to Resident Evil. Environmental puzzles play a part in exploration, but are easy to overcome. Players are able to open chests to find various useful items like weapons, armor, and restoratives in each location visited. Combat in Parasite Eve is handled via a turn-based ATB system. Encounters are random, and once in the battle view, Aya is free to move about in a restricted area to dodge enemies or to position herself more strategically for her next attack. Players can use several weapons like handguns, assault rifles, shotguns, and SMGs. Aya also unlocks the ability to use parasite energy, this game's equivalent to magic. With abilities to heal, temporarily raise defense stats, and fire supercharged projectiles at enemies, players are given an arsenal that would rival most RPGs made by Squaresoft. There are customization options that give the player more flexibility with armor and weapon choice. Selecting tune-up when a tool is in the inventory allows the player to select different attributes that can be transferred from one piece of equipment to another. Like most RPGs, Aya levels up, receiving bonus points, or BP. Players can then distribute these points to either increase their item capacity, the ATB gauge, or the attributes of weapons and armor. Parasite Eve had many industry heavy hitters, with some even achieving their notoriety through this title. Chief among them is Yoko Shimomura, the composer, whose work on the score was met with critical acclaim for its blend of opera and electronica. She went on to score The Legend of Mana and Parasite Eve 2 in 1999, eventually Kingdom Hearts and Front Mission in 2002, and many more iconic scores. Her recent works include the 2022 title Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Hironobu Sakaguchi acted as producer, and is considered the father of Final Fantasy, having come up with the original concept and having directed Final Fantasy 2, 3, and 4. Since then, he has been an executive producer on the Kingdom Hearts series and later Final Fantasy titles. He recently acted as producer on Fantasian in 2021. The game's director, Takashi Takeda, has a short but impressive list as director, known for the critically acclaimed Chrono Trigger and Live Alive, as well as the more poorly received PS2 title, The Bouncer. He is currently a senior manager and producer for Square Enix's Business Division 8. He most recently worked with Ononaki, developed by Tokyo RPG Factory, as its creative producer. Character designs were handled by Tetsuya Nomura, who has come up frequently on Back of the Rack. Dirge of Cerberus and Musashi Samurai Legend are some of the titles he has been attributed to on our show, but his credits range from directing the Final Fantasy VII Remake to working on the Kingdom Hearts franchise in varying capacities. His most recent credits are creative director on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Parasite Eve blends real-life scientific theory with horror to bring a unique mixture to the RPG genre in a time when Japanese horror was on the rise in the West, selling over 950,000 copies in the first half of 1998, making it the third best-selling game of that period behind games like Resident Evil 2 and Gran Turismo. It was the sixth top-selling game of 1998 overall, with 994,000 copies sold. Yet, for reasons known and unknown, Parasite Eve does not have much relevance in players' minds. The title was well received upon release, with many praising its beautiful graphics, cinematic cutscenes, and mature tone, but its linear structure was criticized by many and was often compared to the Resident Evil series, and its combat drew even more negative attention when placed alongside Squaresoft's own Final Fantasy VII. Over the years, Parasite Eve has developed a cult following and is remembered more fondly than in the time that it was released, with many only knowing the name of the title and having never played it. This has given Parasite Eve a cult following with many diehard fans, a game long neglected, and one well suited for Back of the Rack.
All right, guys, so before we jump into the thought table as we usually do, we have a special guest this episode, SeanSeanson, and he is one of our longtime watchers, I would say. He's been there since day one. And
I'm an OG for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, your YouTube channel has, grown since you're in what, the 25K? Like, you're up there, right?
I'm surprised as you are.
So like very, consistent, great output. And so for this episode, we thought we'd invite him back because the first episode we did with him was the Fear Effect episode, which was a PS1 title. SeanSeanson specifically very honed in on the PS1 titles and all that. So another perfect episode for him to be on. And I'll let Sean introduce himself and give a little backstory essentially on how SeanSeanson came to be, his little. So
that's cool. My name is SeanSeanson. Thanks for having me back on. I do videos mostly on the PlayStation 1. I say mostly on the PlayStation 1. There's like one Dreamcast video and everything else is PlayStation 1. But I like to explore the libraries of the console. I like to check out all the games publishers make in one big video. I like to check out obscure games, weird games, hidden gems, Japanese exclusives. I'm basically just looking to find the weird games that nobody knows about and trying to make sure that you now know about them, whether they're worth playing or not. At least you might learn something new. So that's me in a nutshell. You could also just call me generic Irish PlayStation man. That's kind of my whole brand, really, in a nutshell. But yeah, that's me.
Where did you guys first hear about Parasite Eve? Thinking back to obviously what year did this come out?
I wasn't born when this game came out. To scare you guys.
Was it?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
wow,
just give
that's crazy. I feel like I should know this. I think it's 98. I'm gonna say 98 or 97.
Yeah, 97, 98, 90. Yeah, 98. Okay, so Sondi,
I was born. I was a baby.
You were born in 96.
I was born in 97, and I 97. Was. Yeah, when this game came out, I was literally probably walking for the first time.
Wow.
Okay, well, why don't we start with you then? Where did you first hear about this? Barring when it was released in 98.
Barring when it was released, I first heard about this game actually through a Let's Play channel. I'm an avid watcher of a Let's Play group. Well, there was a Let's Play group called Super Best Friends Play. and I watched their Parasite Eve playthrough, and I was like, "Huh, that's a cool game. I'll keep that on my radar." And one of my friends, when we both collect video games. We both were like, "Let's do a trade." And I had Naruto Clash of Ninja 1 and 2 on the GameCube, and he was like, "I'll give you this game I got from the thrift store. I don't think it's worth anything. It looks like a shitty PlayStation 1 game. Here, you can take it." Gave him Clash of Ninja 1 and 2 for Parasite Eve, and he still hates me for this day for giving away Parasite Eve to me essentially for free.
Oh, he regrets it?
Oh, yes, every time. Like, when we told him he was doing an episode, he was like, "Fuck you." Now you're just rubbing it in.
Give me back my game.
Right.
So it was pretty recent then, I guess, that you...
Oh, yes, this is like last couple years, yeah.
Damn, okay. All right, Sean, what about you? What's your history with it?
It's a bit of a different one, just because we didn't get Parasite Eve over here in Europe for like ever. I still don't think it's ever been released over here in an official capacity, because it came out during that weird part where Square just weren't publishing any games in Europe outside of Final Fantasy, so we missed a whole bunch of them. So I remember I would have been about 98. I would have been about 7 years old when this game came out, so I would have been reading magazines, and I might have like seen like clips of it or like parts of it in a magazine just to inform us about it, but then it just never came. We eventually got Parasite Eve 2, which I never played, and I just thought the whole series was like a Resident Evil kind of deal, which I wasn't really into at the time. And then nothing for like a long time until I eventually started looking into all those Square soft games that came out in North America but never came out over here, and I just kept hearing how good Parasite Eve was. It's one of their best games. It's really cool. It's really unique. It's really interesting. And I was like, what, the Resident Evil one? Really? And then when I actually see it in action, I was like, oh, this is pretty
weird.
cool. Yeah, and it's been one that it's been on my radar for playing for a very, very long time. And this is actually my first time fully playing through it. I've played it briefly for a video before, but this is the first time actually playing it, and yeah, very interesting.
I actually learned something from your video and doing research. I didn't know that Square Enix and Electronic Arts partnered up to publish this game. I never knew that. I was like, huh, interesting. You never know.
It's a big reason why we didn't have anything in Europe, because Electronic Arts were big in North America. They were like a kind of cool way of Square getting into just getting their games published in North America. They're like, oh, we'll let EA do it, that didn't exist for Europe. That's why we got nothing. we basically got a game if Sony were like, yeah, we really want that one, and that was why we pretty much only got Final Fantasy. But yeah, EA are pretty helpful that time period for Square.
What so around, let's say, what year did you first sort of hear about that then? Would you say
like the Square thing, or just Parasite Eve itself?
Yeah, Parasite Eve itself.
Yeah, so I probably would have heard about it like during the early days of the PlayStation, but until actually hearing about and learning about Parasite Eve, quite recent, at least in like the 2010s, when I started really paying attention to this sort of stuff. I wanted to find out more. But I've known about it for a long time, but I've actually only played it now. I was waiting for the right time, which ideally would be the transfer from Halloween to Christmas, which is perfect for this game.
Yeah, there's a Christmas episode. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Really? Yeah, Merry Christmas. Or Happy Holidays,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you guys have both heard about this more recently, or, came to light for you guys, your exposure level. This was a title for me that it's sort of like a Final Fantasy VII effect, where I heard of this title through another medium, or in this case, another title. For me, it was The Third Birthday on PSP, which is a Parasite Eve title, right? That was 2007, I want to say. So
that's the Roboter one.
Yeah, I don't know why we didn't, honestly.
Listen, well, I mean, we'll go through the whole series.
Also, yeah. So that was my first exposure to it, not really owning a PS1 in my youth and not really having like access to a lot of that stuff. When I did finally get a PSP, I remember picking up Third Birthday, obviously not even knowing that there was a Parasite Eve series, because the title is the Third Birthday, not Parasite Eve, the Third Birthday. So it kind of like eschews the whole franchise naming and all that. But anyways, that game was super awesome. And I remembered like looking up maybe like reviews or I might have been stuck on one part, so maybe I looked something up, but I found out that it was connected to this whole other universe of games. And I also saw how much people didn't like the third birthday, mainly because of its departure gameplay wise from the other two.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of where I heard from. And I think the third birthday really cemented my love of that era of Square Enix. Because I mean, we're talking about year after year. 2005, Musashi. 2006, Dirge. 2007, Parasite.
Kingdom Hearts 2.
Third birthday. Kingdom Hearts 2. Yeah, there's just like this. They were this output. While it was critically all over the place because not many people like Dirge and all this, but yeah. So that was sort of like that. Sondi, if you cut me open and you
And rip my heart out.
Rip my heart out. This is one of the games that'll fall out.
Would bleed out.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's sort of where it started for me. And I think the main reason we felt that this was Boater, I would say, is because while the series gets talked about a lot, I feel like the second one seems to be like the most well received, from what I'm understanding, and the most expensive, for whatever reason. Maybe there's less copies of that one. But so we just thought like, hey, Parasite Eve feels like a, long neglected title. Not many. First off, it seems like no one has played this game.
Everybody's heard of it, but nobody's played it.
So that was like already a perfect like, yeah, this is gonna be a Boater title. No, So, but yeah, let's jump into the thought table. Let's jump into what we think about it. As always, we do a 3-tiered thought table with presentation, gameplay, story, or presentation, story, gameplay.
Or
sometimes
gameplay.
Sondi likes to switch it up sometimes.
It's dynamic. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, we like to keep everybody on their toes. Sean, since you're the guest, give us your sort of impressions of maybe the style, art design, UI, the way everything is presented. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I think Parasite Eve is a really interesting and somewhat unique game, especially in Square's pantheon of PS1 output. Because if you play like a Square game during that era, you're kind of getting the Squaresoft vibe, so to speak. And I feel like you very much get that within this game, but it's done in a very different way to almost anything else that they have on the console, at least at the point where it came out. Because we're getting like, static pre-rendered backgrounds. We're walking around with cute little 3D models on screen and whatnot. But instead of it being in like a fantasy world or like a sci-fi world or just something kind of, distinctly otherworldly, we're getting like New York City, and we're getting real life locations, grizzly. And we're getting real people. We get like dank apartments, sewers, museums and whatnot. And I think it's really, really interesting to see Square's kind of style adapted to the real world, so to speak. And I think for me, at least, it's the first time I ever really got to experience it at that level, because, Square have done games that have taken place in the real world, or they've shown examples of the real world in them, but I've never really seen like New York in a Final Fantasy VII style or a Final Fantasy VIII style, I think for me, on the presentation side, that's like one of the things that kind of really stood out to me while playing this game.
Oh yes, I have to agree with that. The way that the snow and everything, how it just sets the tone of like, I don't know what it is about New York City and snow. Everybody is just like, it's got to be snowy, it's got to be weird and grisly. There was a scene, I don't know if you guys saw it, but where right before Disc 2 starts, where she goes, the thing's going towards the museum, and it peers up to the Twin Towers. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that was you're in New York if you see the Twin Towers.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Like, what I like about it is because it kind of has this air of like a horror game, and it also kind of has, especially later into the game, it has this air of like a big dumb 90s action movie. And as someone who's like not from North America, essentially all I know about America is stuff from big dumb action movies. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen New York get like blown up by aliens or having Godzilla knock over a landmark. So when I see this in a video game, I'm like, hell yeah, it's real life. This is what New York's like.
Oh yeah, that's so funny, because that perspective on your sort of distance and I guess lack of being cultured in American I guess Americanisms.
Yeah.
Sondi lives closer to New York. I'm in the Southwest, so for me, I almost have a similar experience too, because like everything is set in New York on the East Coast. It's always like
Yeah.
Virginia, New York, Maryland. Like it's always on that side, and California sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Florida, California, New York.
Yeah, so for me as well, Sean, it feels like that's America stuff over there. Like it's
New York
in
is
New
very
York.
much like New York. It is
Yeah.
like just like how Baltimore is exactly like Baltimore and The Wire and
Yeah.
everything. I'm assuming Detroit is not like Detroit with the robots, but
Yeah, it's always robots, man.
Yeah. What, you telling me there's not robots?
I don't know any better. I've never been to Detroit. I gotta only assume.
yeah.
Yeah, let me piggyback off what you're saying about just the overall vibe, because the whole tone of the game has this very 80s cop buddy sort of. I guess it is very 90s, even though it was a 98, and like the scripts and tone of movies were changing out of like the more campy B movie kind of style. They opted to sort of kind of encapsulate that more that 80s cop movie flavor. But then there's that Japanese sort of like body horror, that sort of like that eeriness to it that only the Japanese can do, where it's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, this person's
What's up with this
melting
rat?
Yeah.
Yo.
This is like, I mean, it's exactly like you said. It's like a cop thriller, buddy cop with like and Daniel.
Mhm.
Crazy 90s action thriller with like insane set pieces, and then also some of like the most gruesome body horror that's probably ever been put in a video game, I'd say. Like, I mean, I don't even think that's like hyperbole. Like, I've watched some of these cutscenes, I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah,
and it's just that for an entire game. It always tries to one up itself, and
Die Hard.
I appreciate that they tried to meld this all together. It's crazy. The presentation of it all, it's like somehow quite grounded, and also like the most insane thing you've ever seen, and it works.
I have a lot of like the biggest thing that stood out to me was the tiny details when it came to animations. Like in every single cutscene, like usually in video games when there's an animation, there's like a default 4 animations. There's the talking animation, the surprised, and then the angry. But for every cutscene, there's so many. There's a cutscene where she's gets up and she sits down and she's holding her head thinking about the situation as they explain what happened with the incident in Japan with Eve, or the scientist giving you the good luck charm and David being like, or is it Daniel? Oh my God, please don't tell me I get this right.
Daniel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Daniel gets mad at the scientist and punches him in the face. Like, there's so many small little animations, and every time I saw those, I was like, wow, that's really good. And the biggest thing for me was the opera, the music, but the main theme of the opera being that's when something horrible is about to happen, is when you hear this opera lady singing. It like added to that whole horror theme and keeping it still grounded, because it kept reminding me of that first scene where everybody combust into flames at the opera, and it just brought me back to that horror, because I didn't know anything about the game, and I was like, oh. People are dying. I didn't know that. But
I like what you said about the animations, because there is a lot of surprising, and it's hard to know sometimes, like, was this just well animated for the time? Is it that we have lower expectations for it because it was a PS1 game, so it's like, wow, they were able to do this, but back then it was like, well, this is standard for this one. So I don't know if Sean, maybe you have more insight into how well it's animated, if it's unique to the game.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say for its time, it's incredibly well animated. I know you can obviously kind of judge if it's like, a game of its time versus, just other PS1 games. But I think if you were to compare it to other PlayStation games, the animations are pretty strong across the board, especially for 98. Because if you think about it, we still weren't realistically that far off Final Fantasy VII, which was Square's first 3D game on the PlayStation. And I think that's kind of the base level of what their animations and characters would look like. Yeah. And I always think if you look at Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII, you can see a gigantic increase of the quality of their models and how expressive they are and what they can do. Right. And I think Parasite Eve kind of works as this midpoint in between the two of them, where you can really see the growth of what Square were able to do in just a couple of years working on the console. and it's not as gigantic as like a like a 40-50 hour game like a Final Fantasy. This is a much more condensed, I guess, story.
Yeah.
Wouldn't necessarily say story driven, but it's a much more condensed and flashy version of what that is, and it really shows off like the attention to detail that they put into the characters, as you mentioned, which are great. Like even the little car journeys and stuff where they're talking, there's a lot of expression in those pieces. But then even if you look at like the enemies and kind of the variety of how many there are, their unique animations and attack patterns that they have, there's a lot of attention put into each of them. And I think if you were to compare it to almost any other game from like 98, you can clearly see they're ahead of the curve in what they're doing on the console for sure.
When you think about Final Fantasy VII and their chibi-fied sort of character models, and then we start to sort of go from like the sprite representations of a character to these 3D chibi representations to Final Fantasy VIII, where it starts to like they have more realistic proportions, and Parasite Eve has that. What I think is funny is that they play with this idea of being close to the characters sometimes. Like, in cutscenes, they're pretty close in. Sometimes it's like not third person, sort of like that
like the isometric camera in the top.
Yeah. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's really close and they're like showing off, like you can see Eve's like eyes clearly defined, all her like polygons like in place. Sometimes it's really far back and they look like just little squiggly lines crossing, So it's interesting how they play with that and how comfortable they were at certain points to like pull in close and to be, just far back. I mean, there's a specific scene where I was sort of blown away, but I think it's in the hospital and there's just like this section where if you go to the end of this hospital's hallway, it cuts to a close-up of the window. And it's Parasite Eve maybe from the waist up, and you can look out into the window, and it's I want to say the Chrysler building, and it's like lit up red or something's going on.
Oh yes, yes.
You can't. There's no like interactivity there, unfortunately. But like you really get like this sense of like, oh wow, this looks great. It left me wanting more of these close-up shots, of Parasite
Speaking of
Eve.
Interactivity. What did you think about like the lack of interactivity when it comes to like the environment? Because usually like, in isometric or fixed camera games, there's a lot of points where you can just click something and like read, or it'll be like, oh, this door is broken. Seems like somebody barged through. Like there was nothing like that unless it directly pertained to what you have to do next. Did you think that was weird? I thought that was really weird.
I think it kind of shows, I suppose, the attempts that they were trying to do, because there's definitely aspects of survival horror in this for sure, but you can tell it's still more of a role-playing game of horror, and a very linear one at that. I feel like a lot of the levels in this game feel a bit more almost kind of dungeon-like in a way, where you're not really doing as much exploring for items and kind of investigating around the environment. Like you still do get stuff, but it feels a bit more linear. It feels like it only wants you interacting with stuff that's very clearly. It doesn't really want to waste your time with clicking on every individual thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have played Parasite Eve 2, but it basically changes completely once it goes to that one. But I think it's actually one of the parts that separates the original a little bit for me. It feels like a bit more still rooted in being a role-playing game that's trying to bring you through the story than kind of having you just clicking on every item, even though it probably would have been nice in some locations to get that little bit of extra flavor text.
Wait, have you played Parasite Eve 2?
I haven't completed Parasite Eve 2, but I've played like the first maybe 3 or 4 hours of it.
Oh shit.
And it's basically what if we did Parasite Eve, but it's actually a Resident Evil style game completely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll save that to someday where you might want to play it. But the interesting thing about Parasite Eve is that all 3 of the games in the series are very different from one another. So you could talk to anybody and they could probably have a different favorite depending on what their personal preferences are.
Okay. Yeah, it's a series I think that might have some sort of identity crisis in terms of what they wanted to retain from.
Square love to like adapt. They like to mix things up with their games. I think one of their whole philosophies is they're like, oh, we like to do a little something different every time. That's why like, Final Fantasy 7 and 8 and 9 are all a little bit different. Parasite Eve, I think, is them at like crazy experimental where we're like, we'll make it a lot of different every time. So it's Square at their squariest, I guess you could say.
Now I want to get on you. I want to get on you, Ben, first before you ask your question. You said something wild. What is it that you don't like about the OST?
Okay.
Oh.
I was like, when did I say?
He's like, I got the DMs.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot to say about the presentation, but if Sondi wants to go there, so the OST was, so I'll just say that the main theme, the battle theme, right, is cool. I really like it. It's, I don't know. I have this strange idea that battle themes should change dependent on your location. So, like, obviously, you're in the hospital, you're in the museum, you're in, and a lot. I don't know if other games do this. It kind of feels like it's like this weird Mandela effect. Where I'm like, wait, don't these themes change as you're in different levels? So I'm sort of applying this arbitrary like rule to these games sometimes. Where I'm like, I feel like it shouldn't just be the same battle theme everywhere you go, but maybe it is. I don't know. So I guess that's a long way to say that I did enjoy the main battle theme, but I think that it does get a little grating. There's like this this high pitched, almost as if like your health bar is low. There's like this synth or something, this key that they're alternating.
Oh,
and no, that's the bass line, but like in the middle, like I don't know, it just sounds like the alert for when your character's health is low, and maybe not maybe not like an alert for when your health is low in this game, but in other games there's this like almost like an alarm, like an ambulance sort of like siren-y sound. And I kept hearing it in this beat. So I would think that my health was low. Dude, I'm fucked up. I'm just I'm fucked up. Like, as I'm explaining this, I'm like, whoa, this is like trippy. But, and yeah, so like it kept bothering me. But like other than that, that piece of music was probably my favorite. The opera piece in the beginning, I think, does set the tone. And it really does have that eeriness to it, which is sort of like the main theme, or at least the main sort of tonic. It sort of roots the whole thing with the opera, you know, kind of backdrop. But every other place I went to, I feel like it was either a lack of music or very subdued music, or music that felt very like cheesy and corny to me, which I don't say lightly because I like city pop, and city pop is like very corny, you know, Japanese music. But this felt like they were trying to go for that sort of like 80s, almost like a serialized TV series or something. Like it just felt very cheesy to me. So it didn't
Law and Order core.
Yeah, like it didn't quite hit
bom.
the. Yeah, that's actually a very good way to put it, because it didn't quite hit the heights that I thought it would based off of the battle theme. So like I'm hearing the battle theme like, oh shit, the fucking OST is about to slap. And then as I kept going through the game, I'm like, oh, there's nothing else like that battle theme, is there? Well,
Yeah,
that's
we're
kind
just
of
chilling.
disappointing. Well, I don't know. What did you guys think about the OST?
Goat. It's like, nah, let me not. I really like the OST for this game. I don't know. I just really liked really mellow, really relaxing, chill PlayStation 1 songs, OSTs that you could listen to while studying. And this is the exact.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I wanted from this kind of vibe. Because it never really like. The opera singer, that was a good motif throughout the rest of it. And the way that Yoko Shimura composed the sounds, and even just... Because for me, it's not even just the OST that sounds really good. Because I wasn't really expecting them to go full-blown rock or techno or anything crazy like that. I wasn't expecting anything upbeat, especially because it's a pseudo-survival horror game, you know what I mean? So...
Yeah.
I was like, the tracks were exactly what I wanted, and it fit the exact mood. And re-listening to it, because there's a couple songs before I even played Parasite Eve that I already listened to on like playlists that I have specifically with video game music. Okay. And so I was already aware of those, and hearing those in the game with the context of where the song was being played, it was like, oh, that's even better. And I enjoyed that. At least a lot of the sound effects, actually, I really liked a lot of the sound effects in the game. They have some really good chimes. Like, specifically when you use the heal, that chime, oh man, every time.
to me, that's like classic Square. Like you get reminded
Mhm.
it's a Square game when you use some of the magic, you know, because
I was
you
about to say
hear
that, yeah.
you hear the sound effects of other games. Like you can sometimes hear a little Final Fantasy VIII styling in there, a
Yep.
little bit of FF7. It's I don't know, the twinkle. Like when you're using like I
Yeah.
always call it like a twinkle, like a like
Yeah.
some sort of like dust on you or something. Like it
Yeah.
carries over. And I think it's always really weird the juxtaposition of being like this, you know, cop with a gun
Yeah.
shooting like a giant dinosaur with like Final Fantasy magic playing noises. It's really cool.
I think there is a sort of interesting dissonance between the gritty, grounded cop in Brooklyn or New York, and then you have like her using, I guess, Parasite Eve powers or what, paranormal energy. What is the
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Parasite energy, yeah.
So I think like when she's like doing any of those moves, it does borderline into like the I guess Final Fantasy realm, and it feels very like, oh right, this is not as grounded as it's pretending to be, but I think it does blend them well enough. But
Yeah.
on the topic of music, I think the ambient sound was also a bit lacking in some areas. Some areas were quiet, like complete silence. Some areas did have a little bit of like some like sound effects, like from a pipe, or maybe just like a ambient synth or something that was not quite a melody, not quite a song, but just like a synth that was playing to give like a hallway a feel, you know. So
yeah,
I felt like it was a little inconsistent in that way. Sondi, I do agree with you that it being like a horror tinge sort of affair, that I think it sort of lends to that genre, and it fits. Obviously, I wasn't expecting like a fanfare or like a every time you beat like a, you know, but it was just, I thought it was gonna be, honestly, I just thought it was going to be cooler. I thought it was going to be more of what, I don't know, like what genre would you call that main battle theme, that like what, that bounce that it has, because it's like kind of pop, but I don't know whatever
you're
genre
right,
that
it doesn't
is.
really have a genre, because I was going to say like
it's like I kind of
techno?
define it by like the little, like the battle theme is like just starting with like the little, like, I don't know, piano like scented, like bam 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 bam, like that to me is kind of what defines the whole thing, as it kind of goes into it. And then you got the like the it's weird, right? It's, you could probably splice a lot of things, little pop, little housey, like so I think Yoko's always been very good at getting a lot of different genres into her soundtracks on there and being a bit forward thinking with them. And I think a lot of the soundtrack on this is pretty forward thinking for the time as well, because it's as we mentioned, it's a horror game and it has a lot of ambient tunes, which I think you could probably align up with, you know, oh, this is kind of in the style of a Resident Evil. It's just something subtle in the background, which I think is like, you know, if you're in the sewers, or especially when you're in the hospital with the power off, I think it's really good there. But then at the same time, it's like a role-playing game. You're getting into battles, so you got your battle theme, you got your boss theme, and these are a lot more high energy. And I think, like you said, Ben, it is like, you know, sometimes I think you would expect more battle themes or more kind of variance in them, which I think is a bit more common for newer games in the genre for sure. But I think back then, like even most role-playing games usually have like one or two base battle teams, and they'll keep that consistent for like 30 hours of the game. I think in this one, like it is, I guess you could say it is quite repetitive, but I probably fell into the camp where I thought it was really, really good for like the what is it, maybe like 10 hours of the runtime. I was very happy with just that for as long as we had it.
Oh yeah, real quick, what are you guys' playtimes? Like, what did it come out to, you know, finishing the game? I'll be the first to admit that I didn't beat the game because I couldn't beat the game because I was already playing. I was telling Sondi, I probably totaled out about 25 hours playing this game, with 5 of the hours, or maybe even 6, honestly, trying to beat the 3rd form of the ultimate being boss at the end. I couldn't beat him. I played for 6 hours from this past Tuesday. And then I tried again on, I think the last time I tried was Friday, and I was like, fuck this shit. I cannot I'm just going to watch this fucking ending. Like, it was so stressful. But, what did you guys end up with? Hours?
I didn't beat the game either. I beat the final boss.
Technically, you did. I would say you did beat it more than I did.
I got to the boss, and then when you get into the room, instead of opening the door when you have to like lead it into the like
I know
the
exactly
thing,
what you've done.
I went to go save.
I also did this shit. You tried to save, and then you die, and then you have to fight the boss again. You're like, fuck this shit.
At that point, I was like, fuck this.
My stupid, like, my fucking ape brain being like, right, I know I need to run away from this guy, but what if I try to save real quick?
Yeah.
It's exactly
that's
what
such that's such a funny trap, though. I think in retrospect, it's like at the time I was like, no, fuck this. But like in retrospect, I'm like, there's a door to escape. No, man, let me get the phone real quick.
Let's think about how the designers and just like the overall planning of that came along, where it's just like the director's like, okay, so let's make the boss 4 stages, incredibly difficult to. I think the third one is the hardest from what I was reading.
Third one is like the only one that's really like by far the most challenging. The fourth one is more of a gimmick bit where you just gotta wait till a cutscene happens, then you pretty much win. And
then after the player goes through these tribulations and they go back into the room, let's have them want to save, and let's do an instant death if they try to save. No one in the room was like,
it's like, wow, that fight was hard, because it's literally like, that fight was hard, I don't want to have to do it again. It's literally just yeah, it's like, oh shit, man, that was tough. Well, what's the worst thing that could happen right now? Having to do that again. Well, guess what?
They were even worse. Like I saw that you couldn't save, and I was like, "Fuck!" And I tried to run to the door real fast, and it's just spinning slow as fuck to open the door.
There's literally like, there's no way that you can pick up that phone and get out of that room. I don't think. I think you're donezo. Yeah, it's really funny.
It's insane. Like what? Like, it's like the director was like, I hate gamers. I want them to suffer. Like,
I wish more games would do that. But like, fuck you guys, you assholes.
I would like to know like the actual finish rate, or the completion rate that people like. Because I mean, okay, think about it. 1998, like people buy this game, they get to that ending, they're like, fuck. Like, how many people actually beat Parasite Eve? And maybe this was the reason that's just like, yeah, not many people beat it or could.
I think the thing with Parasite Eve is it's legitimately a game where if you don't understand some of the base mechanics of like the weapon system and whatnot, you can legitimately like F yourself and you're gonna have a really hard time, you know? Like when you said you've struggled for like a few hours on like that boss, it's like, yeah, you could absolutely do that if you just, you know, if you because I mean you pick up like tools and weapons and stuff and you're like, oh yeah, I'll use this or I'll use this tool. This is really important to know. And if you mess it up, you're just going to be really underleveled.
Yeah, and you could be like me using an ice gun with 2 shots at the end of the game with no damage.
There's this illusion, and this obviously gets more into the gameplay, which we could talk about later, but there's this illusion that there's more open-endedness to how you could tackle something. You know, that you have all these options. Here are all these guns and all these effects with the guns. Go ahead and choose what you... It's like, no, you have to pick a specific thing. If you fuck around and do rate of fire, or if you're choosing there's a way that you have to play this game, which is just a fucking, it's a trick. It's a goddamn trick. Like,
it's pretty interesting. But I mean, I think like for me, just to go on runtime, I think mine was like 10 hours, right? And that was true. That was skipping.
Wow. Like 15 hours.
I think there's an optional area, right? The warehouse.
The warehouse, yeah.
So there's a point in the game where it tells you go to Chinatown or go to the warehouse. Yeah. And like I said, it's my first time playing it. I try not to use a guide whenever I'm playing a game for the first time, just to have like an authentic experience. And I just completely missed the warehouse entirely, which I'm not sure what was in there, but I did feel a little dicey when it came to the end of the game, and I was like, I feel like I'm not leveled up enough for this. Keep in mind, I barely scraped by. Every single item I had to use, I was down to like minuscule health each time. I couldn't believe like I won these fights, and I thought Eve on the Statue of Liberty was the final boss, so I blew all my stuff there, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I barely scraped through it. And then the game kept going. I was like, well, this is it. We're done.
See, I justified it in my mind. I justified it in my mind, like, well, Sean plays a lot of these PS1 games, so of course he's gonna know how to fucking manage his inventory. He's gonna know when to use the health items. He's gonna know how to finesse it. So that's my excuse.
I had an inventory full of medicine fours. I
Same.
still struggle. Like by the time I got to like the final boss, I had literally zero. I was just running around with like 3 health, just like spamming like heal 3 as it like slowly recharged. Like, please give me a chance to
Yeah.
not die for a second. Like I was just struggling.
What did you guys think of the designs of the creatures? Because I feel like that's not something that seems to be talked about a lot in this game when I like look online. And
The worms were
it's a big
stupid.
part.
They looked ugly.
Snakes?
The little worms when you go to the zoo, or were they snakes?
Yeah, like I don't know.
I think they were popping out the ground.
I think they might. Oh, I know. All of those guys were shooting at the little balls at you.
Oh, yeah.
That was probably the worst designed creature, but every other creature, amazing.
They're like the moles.
Yeah,
The moles
I love
in
the pterodactyls. I love the birds, the weird, gross rats. I loved every single monster design except for the boss that was on the hospital. I felt it was a little too over designed.
Spider.
Yeah.
Spider one.
Yeah, because
I
I think
about Eve in general. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think one of the things with the game that it does quite well, considering how insane almost all of its designs are, because it's pretty much like, here's an animal, here's a now evil, spooky version of that animal. But they managed to actually introduce that at the very beginning of the game with the cutscene with the rat. It's showing you how Eve affects the animals. So you're kind of you're basically just killing all of New York Zoo animal population throughout this game, but it actually makes sense in the context of what it's showing you, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I like that it kind of goes from just giving you insane amounts of weird creatures to kill. Like, one minute you're fighting a mole and a worm, then you're fighting giant cockroaches, a spider on a hospital, alligator, dinosaur.
Fight a T-Rex. Like, that's
all over.
Yeah. I like that they kind of they went a bit they kept the horror elements in it, because all these things look disgusting. They're like weird, creepy creatures, and a lot of them get, cutscenes. Some of them don't. Like, I think the weird thing with the spider is that you don't really get an introduction to it. You're just on the top of the hospital, and it's like, oh, there's a big spider up here. Go fight that.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed them in the game for sure.
Yeah, I think there was a great variety for sure of things that you were fighting. Every area seemed to have something unique. And most of the enemies I thought were well designed with fun patterns to try and at least some of the bosses were more frustrating, but just like the enemies that you encounter as you're kind of scurrying around the subways and wherever. But yeah, I did enjoy them, and it actually reminded me a lot of Resident Evil 6's designs for their zombified animals.
Yes.
So it felt a lot like that, which I thought was interesting too, because obviously Resident Evil 6 comes years after this, but yeah, I don't know. I just kind of noticed that, especially with the dinosaur. Do you remember in Resident Evil 6 when you fight the guy who transforms into six dinosaurs?
At the end of Leon's campaign, it transforms into a dinosaur. Yeah.
Anytime somebody mentions Resident Evil 6, it sounds like the greatest fucking game ever.
It is.
No, it's bad. But what you're saying, is the coolest shit ever.
Just take away the Resident Evil part and just play a great action.
Just call
game.
it 6.
Yeah, stupid action game starring people.
You drop kick somebody. You do a backflip off of something and drop kick somebody. Like, that's cool in a Resident Evil game.
Man, I tell you what, if they remake Resident Evil 6 someday and make all of this stuff cool and just keep all the crazy shit in, and they will, and it will be their best selling game, I promise you.
Give it 4 years. We're gonna be Resident Evil 6 remake, and it's gonna be glorious. We're gonna be there first day and be like, I told you guys, go back to the first Halloween special. We told y'all.
Yeah, Resident Evil 6 is amazing.
Yeah.
And I what's interesting to me is I feel like the gameplay maybe not a lot of people didn't like how action focused it was, but it still feels like Resident Evil to me. From 4, 5, and 6, it feels like a natural progression. I'm like, this is what 4 was, barring maybe some of the slightly over top set pieces, but this is the same shit. You're fighting trolls in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
You're fighting giant sharks, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the whole over the shoulder third-person shooter thing, it's pretty much all kicked off thanks to Resident Evil 4. So when people are saying like, yo, this stuff, it's a bit too silly, it's it's trying to do some like Gears of War, it's trying to follow the trends and stuff. It's like Resident Evil started that trend. Resident Evil 4 started that. This is Resident Evil doing Resident Evil. This is what you guys loved, and they're just taking it to the extreme. It's just, it has to be at least a little bit spooky. Well, some of it is.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Some of it is. Yeah. Some of it's also really cool and not spooky, but
So I have some more for the presentation. I really liked the little touches, like Aya wearing her ball gown. I feel like in that time you didn't really get a female lead character like that wearing a more feminine outfit in that beginning section. It was cool. It feels like in the 90s you were like this gung-ho, like, if you think about Final Fantasy games or even just in culture, you weren't going to be like to pitch a game and be like, okay, so you're going to start out as this character. She's a cop, but at the first level, she's going to be in a gown, and you're like, wait, what? Kids are going to want to play?
Where did she hide the gun?
So it's just kind of, I thought it was kind of ballsy. I also thought it felt very like mature, and it felt like it was pushing some boundary.
It's not even that she's like in a gown strictly. Like I think that's a really nice aesthetic to it. I just love the idea that she's going on a date. Yeah. And it's like a bad date, like the whole opening of the game is kind of just, it's a very standard thing. Like people have been on dates or bad dates, Yeah. But I just love that this opening to the game is such like a normal kind of awkward experience. It doesn't really make Aya seem like superhuman or anything. She's just like, oh, I'm a cop. I don't want to be here. And then all hell breaks loose and it goes to, just the most crazy thing you've ever done with like a gal in a ball gown down the sewers. It's pretty cool.
Very, very cool. I thought it just makes me think how cool this game could look in a different way, obviously, because it looks, like amazing now. But as a remake, I just feel like they could really do some crazy ass shit with it visually to really bring that stuff to like the modern age. But I'll move quickly here. What do you guys think about the FMVs? Because I feel like, in my eyes, I feel like they went from okay to really good all of a sudden. Like, I feel like the quality improved. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think Square were like the best at FMVs during the whole of the PlayStation era, and I think for me personally, I think Parasite Eve is like one of their like highlights because the game plays a pretty integral role on FMVs to kind of show the larger than life moments, because all of the biggest set pieces in these games take place in the FMVs. I would say all of the biggest horror moments in this game take place in the FMVs.
Yeah.
And I think early on it goes from like the crazy horror stuff, like especially with the opening, like even the opening scene, I would say is one of probably the strongest I've seen in a game, because it's so incredibly like visceral and disgusting, and it's like it's not just somebody dying, it's a whole room of people like bursting into flames, which is incredible to see in action. And then it just escalates from there. Like I think the scene later in the game with like Lorraine and Daniel, where they try to get there just in time, and then everybody just turns into a giant pool of human just melt goo. Like you're getting to watch that. It's absolutely incredible to see, because I don't think any game has ever gone that over the board, at least in like a mainstream, at least in Square's sense, because they're putting like, high quality, top of the line FMV work into a video game, and they're using it to do like the craziest thing you've ever seen. This is why I think if they were to remake that game, I don't think they'd be able to do the cutscenes in the same way. I think they would be legitimately too graphic to pass the censor.
Oh, I think so too.
What they're doing, I don't think any game could do that. Like a realistic version of that. I think it would be too heavy for a censor, honestly, and that's wild. to think about that.
I think specifically about the scene where Daniel hops out of the helicopter to throw the ammo.
Oh my god! And then the best scene I've ever seen.
Fire. That cannot be remade.
That is the best cutscene I've ever... Like, I mean, because that game is just in a series of insane escalations up until that point. And I don't think I've... Like, I remember watching it in motion like a couple of days ago, and I was like, this might be the coolest thing I've ever seen in a PlayStation amazing. Game.
I screamed. I was like, yeah, go.
And he's...
Like, unironically.
And he's just fine afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unironically, I thought it was like badass.
I was like, damn, this is the way he goes. Damn, man.
Because you can question, like, oh man, like, wow, how improbable is it that this dude would jump from a helicopter, burst into flames, and nail the one throw with a couple of bullets? But like, that's what all action movies back then were, you know, the most improbable thing happening in the coolest way imaginable.
Yeah.
That's all you want.
That Aya would know that he's throwing a fucking cartridge of ammo. Like, she just like looks at him and like, it's just so funny.
Got it.
I know what gun to use this in. But like that's what it's all about. Not everything has to be the pinnacle of logic. Sometimes something can just be cool for the sake of it, and I think that is peak. Cool. You know, flaming man in the sky. So
very,
cool.
Very, yeah. I think the lighting somehow, it looked like it improved. I don't know if it was just me in like the later cutscenes when she's on the naval ship. I don't know if it's the light source, but I feel like in the earlier scenes, a lot of the FMVs did look a little flat to me. But later on, I was like, holy shit, that actually like looks like, that's like Toy Story level, if not better. Like, it looks really good.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it was, there's some great FMVs. You know, we played Fear Effect last. And I don't think I've played a game since that has FMVs. Have we, Sondi? Have we played any FMV titles?
We haven't played any FMV games. I've played an FMV game personally, but yeah.
Oh, which Silent Hill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That has FMVs. Those are really good looking too. The movement's a little weird, but it kind of bothered me that Aya always had her pistol, even though you maybe had a different gun in battle. I was confused. I'm like, was there a resource issue possibly where they're like, oh, we can't have her carrying the shotgun or the like? It always has to be a pistol. What do you guys think about that? What you guys?
Yeah, I always thought that was awkward how it just transitions, and it's always like a weird delay where she's like pistol.
Yeah.
Now I'm holding an assault rifle. Always thought that was weird.
I think it could be because some of the cutscenes have her, you know, with one hand without a pistol and one hand with a pistol. Like most of the time it's her either running like this or just running around like with a pistol in her hand and then something else. And I think maybe for just transferring into certain scenes that are in-game, it probably might have been easier to keep it like that. Because if you change the model to like holding most of the other weapons, which are like assault rifles, grenade launchers, shotguns, that kind of thing, you might have to completely change how some things are done. It's one of those little things that I kind of learned to live with in the PS1. You look at it and you go, oh, it'd be cooler if she did this and she did that. But I usually think there's probably a reason for it somewhere.
Yeah.
So, but I get what you mean for sure.
Yeah. That's what I imagined. All right. Well, I don't know. Do you guys have anything else about the presentation, the UI, or anything else?
I'll save it for gameplay.
I want to shout out the world. I want to shout out the world map, which I really like.
Oh fuck! Yes, the world map.
The world map. Like it's pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Like, I mean, you could have just had it be a static menu or like the map of New York, and you just cycle through it. But I think doing kind of like this, because it's a rendered map, you know, like it's very detailed, and then when you get into it very close, it's very crunchy PlayStation looking thing.
Yes,
and I like, as an aficionado of world maps, I think getting to see a Squaresoft New York scrunchy world map is a joy, especially since it has a day and a night cycle as well. So you get two different variations of it, and you get a lovely little piece of music while you're on it as well. Yeah. So shout out to that. Completely inconsequential to the game, but like really cool.
It made I think that I mean, I would argue that it's pretty integral to making it feel like a bigger world, right? I think it definitely adds to the space of the game, and it gives you a good you know, like a sense of the geography. And yeah, the helicopter view of it as it's spinning and you hear like the like it's just it's so badass. I'm just like, this is incredible, and it looks amazing. It has that retro PS1, you know, crunchy graphics like you're describing. Yeah, that, I don't know why I didn't put that in there, but it was one of my favorite parts. I think I
spaced on it too. Yeah.
I want to like it could have been nothing, you know. It could have just been there, and you wouldn't even have thought about it otherwise. But it kind of shows you the effort that they put in goes to kind of just really add to these sort of things. It's making something that could be nothing something.
Yeah,
and I think that's a great example of it.
Yeah. It definitely makes Aya always having her pistol more forgivable, because if that was the trade-off, like, well, we can make this really cool world map,
Yeah.
or
or she holds a slightly longer black series of pixels.
yeah, that might have been the conversation. All right, let's move into story. Sean, since you're the guest again, let's have you give us your impressions and your thoughts. Interesting, any stuff like that.
Cool. I guess first thing I'll state is that I'm aware Parasite Eve is a follow-up to a book called Parasite Eve. So it's actually based off a horror novel from Japan that was then turned into a movie that Square decided they were like, oh, we're going to make a game as a follow-up to this book because it was pretty popular in Japan at the time, I think. So it's pretty interesting in that regard because it's technically a standalone thing, because I would say the vast majority of people who ever played this game, especially if you live in North America, would not know that this is a follow-up to a book, right? There's parts in the story that allude to the book, but it's completely standalone in its nature entirely. Yeah. And I played through the game without reading the book or watching the movie, just to kind of get the experience that most people would have had from it. And I think it's kind of incredible that they managed to make this cool standalone story with a lot of, scientific concepts and all sorts of different things within it that is actually legitimately derived from another story and has, continuation from that, but completely works on its own merit, which is interesting. So I guess the question is, did you guys know about the book? Did you read anything about the book? Or did you just kind of pop in the game and go, all right, let's see what it's going to tell you? Because it's very few games would do that, especially from Square,
Oh, yes. I knew at least about the movie, but I didn't know about the book until we started doing research for this episode. And as I was researching it after playing the game, from what I understand, the book is essentially a scientific dissertation about literal mitochondria and the bodyworks of a cell. It's like a theory in the scientific realm of like, hey, what if we are just a bunch of microorganisms forming as one bodily unit and stuff like that. And he kind of explores that deeper in the book, but it's kind of weird because it's very scientific. I guess it's really cool for Japan at the time. And the movie isn't a one-to-one telling of the book, even though it follows the same like plot. It's like completely different from both. And then the game is completely different from all three. And there's a specific scene, I think right after Aya wakes up from, I forgot what happened in between. I think it might have been after the hospital. But there is a particular scene where they break down, like, this is the synopsis of the book. This is what happened. Here it goes right here. And if you don't know, you would know, like, oh, this is based on the book. This is what they're explaining to me right now. But in context, if you understood, like, okay, that's the book. This is based on something else. This is a sequel of sorts, then you can appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah. Like, the way it works is it kind of goes through, like, you get introduced to the mystery, you get introduced to the characters, you get, like, dripped a little piece of information, like you would as a cop thriller, You're kind of asking each other questions. I mean, the game has a lot of slower burn bits where it has a lot of talking between the different characters, a lot of progression of the story. In between all these big action sequences, and you kind of get brought through this nice natural progression where you're learning more and more about things. And then they bring in the character Maeda from Japan, who essentially acts as, he's like, hey guys, I have information about the book, the first book, and everything that happened there, and I'm here to fill in the blanks between what's happening.
I am lore guy. What do you need?
It's really like, because the book, because I mean, like, the original story takes place in Japan naturally. So they just got a guy from Japan to fly in. He's like, "Oh, something's going on in North America that sounds a bit similar to something that happened here. Let me check on that." I'm impressed at how well it works as a standalone thing. You could probably feel a bit lost with some of the more scientific elements that are there, because you are getting dumped with a lot of terms, and it's, even though it is quite accurate, and a lot of this is taken from real life research. I think at one point they reference Richard Dawkins at one point in some of his theories and whatnot. It's impressive how easy, like, how not lost I got in not only this story, but considering it was derived from an existing one. I thought it was pretty well done.
Yeah, it was. I think it was very streamlined. It was paced well. I don't think there was a single level to that, or like a story beat or anything that overstayed its welcome. I think all the
Yeah.
all the scenes that happened felt like they were good character moments or good expository. I think everything just worked for me. I don't know. I feel like normally I would be one to get lost in the sauce, but I didn't in this. I was like, oh shit, like this is totally making sense to me. And they sort of expand on the mitochondria, like sort of like the backbone, you know, of the whole story is this whole mitochondria thing. And I think they drip feed it to you in a way, and it expands and it expands. And so like you start to build on the elements that they've sort of laid out for you. And it starts to make
Yeah.
sense, although it gets a bit wonky at the end with so much that happens. You're like, wait, what the okay, you know, like
I don't think that part's
the
a
birth.
mitochondria.
Yeah, like the whole like
Yeah.
what the ultimate being birthed in the water, and just like
Oh
coming
yeah,
out.
because the ocean is the mother of the creator. All
Yeah,
that stuff, yeah.
So it was all like it was surprisingly good. Very, I can't stress how Japanese it felt with those certain moments, but very well done. And I thought even like this would be a good movie. Like this is,
Yeah.
you know, flesh out some
It-
of the characters, but
It would be a great movie, or it would be like a great 8-part TV serial or something. It was like when
Yeah.
you guys mentioned with like the CSI kind of thing. It has that kind of structure to it as well, where each part of the game kind of feels like, well, here's a level and here's like a story segment in it. And if you were to break that into, because it even is broken up into parts, like it's in a day system, right? You have like
Yeah.
day 1 to 6 is how it's in there. So it feels like the game is broken up into its individual sections, you know,
Episodes,
like I think at the beginning of the game, obviously you have the pretty high-paced start when you're in the opera, and then you go into a more slow-paced bit where you're talking with the police and you get to meet everybody in the station. You get introduced to the characters and kind of there, because there's not like a huge cast of characters, but I think the cast that is there are all pretty consequential. Like I love the dudes, the gun dudes, like the gun who's very much like, he's like, man, I work with guns, I hate guns, and then the dude is like, man, I love guns. And I think they have a fun little story. You meet the dog, which leads up to later in the game. You meet like, you know, Daniel's son. You hear about Lorraine. I like that it gives you these little bits of like normal interaction, and they almost all pay off at some point throughout the story, even as it goes from being that more kind of cop drama to the more, you know, insane action AAA movie, fighter pilots melting in the sky, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think they handle characters. They handle them all very well. They set them up like the guys in the precinct, the gunsmiths or whatever, those guys. They set them up with sort of reasons for why they are the way they are. Especially like it has the whole status quo change where you're going back to the precinct, you're going out, you know, and exploring or just further investigating, and then when Eve attacks the precinct, and then everything changes, and then you kind of get a little bit of character moments for each person, and then you get even nice dialogue in between story beats where you're traveling in the cop car with between Daniel, Aya, and Maeda, and I'm like, this is good. This is good ass shit.
It's good. It's good conversation, and like those scenes look really good too. I never got like sick of those. And like just the multiple, because they change the angles sometimes on the side, sometimes in the back. You just see Maeda's head on his shoulders up. It's really well done.
Yeah. I really liked it. It felt very inspired to me. I was like, yeah, these camera angles that they're putting here. They really want this to feel like a movie. I think to feel cinematic. I think on the box art it says like a cinematic RPG or something like that, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
That's
the goal, you know. I think that kind of permeates through the entire thing. It's very story focused, but like it's not meant to be as long. It's more, we're going to just give you a lot of stuff very quickly, a nice condensed, like that's the thing. Like I think games are generally a bit longer, but even this is a bit shorter by some Square standards, and I think that's what they mean by the whole, you know, cinematic aspect of it. Beyond all the cool cutscenes and beyond all the cool camera angles, they're trying to give you a more compact cinematic experience, as they say. And it's pretty sweet.
What do you guys think about? Oh, go on, Sondi.
I was gonna say the only thing I didn't like was how the game ended with them going to the opera. I kind of felt that was a little tone deaf. especially because like thousands of people have died.
I thought something similar too. I was like, wouldn't there be like a almost like a
memorial?
Yeah. When unless it was like, I don't know, 10 years after, but I don't think it was.
I think it was like a month later or something crazy.
Because Ben, the little kid, right? He's still
there.
Yeah. I did find it like because there's two parts to that ending, right? Like the part where they all stand up when the fire comes out and they're like, "Oh no!" Like they have some sort of like PTSD. They're like, I thought that was very like funny and overblown, almost like a comedy moment.
Yeah.
But then when it transfers into the end, where you have like all the mitochondria eyes, where it's like, oh, it's inside everybody. It's never not fully gone away. I think that part of the ending was good, but I do agree with you in the sense that, there's probably a more respectful way of doing this. But I think that also you could say it's very indicative of classic 90s action movies where like something crazy would happen, the White House would get blown up and then they're just at like a diner or something celebrating.
They're just at the airport like I'll see you next time.
It's you're not mourning the dead, you're celebrating being alive. I think that's it.
That's very true. What'd you guys think about Aya as a character, as our main protagonist? Aya, what'd you guys think of her?
Yeah, I really liked Aya. I thought she was a really strong lead character. I kind of liked her because it's not like the funniest I think, but there's like a few funny moments, just a few nice human moments between her and Daniel especially, and her relationship with like the rest of the precinct and even Maeda to a certain extent, because a lot of the story beyond that kind of revolves around the mystery of Aya's past and how she's tied in with Eve and how she's tied in with God, I can't remember the name of the opera singer. Is it like Melissa or something? Melissa, yeah. And how she's tied in with Melissa and how that all pans out, I think is pretty interesting. She's not like the most bombastic Square character ever, but I don't think she really needs to be in the context of this game. I got to the end of the experience. I felt like I wanted to see more of her. I feel like she's a good character, kind of like a more grounded version of the usual Squaresoft protag. One of their more fully likable ones, I think, just because she's so normal and I guess unfazed by how crazy everything is. She's like, wow, this is insane. Why me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a cop. I got a sense of justice, that kind of thing.
I think my favorite scene is with her and Daniel right after the opera scene, and they're in the car, and she's just like, "It's a bad date. That sucks." Like that, it gave me a little bit more characterization, and I feel like a lot of because it kind of take her out of it a little bit so that she can be the player insert for the mysteries of everything going on. But I felt I do agree that as a character, I can see, especially with Parasite Eve 2 or even the third birthday. I don't know how they do it, or we'll see eventually. But I can see them progressing the character further and giving her more, especially in the second and third games. She's probably at the point where she's like, I know what this shit is. It's not surprising to me no more. I'm not going to be like, what? I'm going to just go in and handle business. And I can see her becoming that stoic, badass action hero that you can usually see by the time in like a third sequel. Like, what's a good example? Like Taken 2 and Taken 3.
Taken 2. Okay. So it always comes back to Taken 2.
All roads lead back to Taken 2.
Because Taken 1, you get this sense of the mystery, but by Taken 2 and 3, he's even the other, or like John Wick, where it's like, what you're fighting up against.
We know by now, like, you don't mess with John Wick. We know by now that you don't take John Taken's daughter.
Exactly.
John Taken.
Why would you take my family? You saw what I did last time.
Why do we have to teach you this lesson again?
Aya to me was she was super normal, and I think she was very grounded, and she was reacting how I would think anybody would react in maybe something, I guess, in this sort of 80s kind of vibe. I really liked her. I don't actually know her progression character-wise in Third Birthday or Parasite Eve 2. Third Birthday because I just don't remember, and I think I don't know what her progression is in that.
Yeah, you haven't played it since then.
Yeah. It's a weird one to look at. Like I guess just to give you a quick primer of it, Parasite Eve 2, she's like known as kind of like a hero for what happened at New York, and she goes to work for like a branch of the FBI that are specifically fighting parasites and preventing mitochondria again. So now she's in LA in the FBI, and it is like what you said, it is more badass action hero. They send an Aya Brea where something is going down.
So Leon Kennedy. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. She's like, you've survived one ordeal, now you're our expert at it. You can't tell anybody. Third Birthday. I briefly played the Third Birthday before. But like, I think even if you watch a trailer of the Third Birthday, so much insane stuff is happening. Like, I know like Parasite Eve in itself, there's some insane stuff happens, but there's like ghost spirits flying in and out of people. I think she can like take over people's bodies and whatnot. Yeah, that's where people were like, all right, you might have jumped the shark a little bit here. You've no more the hell out of it.
What's going on?
Yeah. Her parasite ability or whatever, she can hop into different people, different perspectives, which, I mean, mitochondria, I feel that kind of makes sense in some way, no? Based on what we played? No?
I think it's just one of those ones where like when you look at like the transfer from game to game, you know, I know it's their excuse to be like, we're going to change up the gameplay entirely, because that one's more of a third person body swapping action game from what I gather. But even then, it's like, I think Parasite Eve 2 was like an action game, but you still have like, it's still a Parasite Eve game. This one feels like it could be like insane levels of over the top.
What's that?
God Eater.
Yes, straight up Mind Jack, or that GameCube FPS Geister.
Geister.
Yeah, like
second sight. Can't you?
Second sight. Yes.
Yeah.
Second sight.
Psyops maybe. I feel like that happens to us. All the psychic games. But I haven't played Third Birthday in a long time, nor have I played it with the context of previous Parasite Eve games. To really know the thing. But it's just, listen, I always say, if you look for reactions from people on the internet for things, you're probably going to find people hating on it for one reason or another. So I'll wait until I eventually play it myself.
Right. Yeah. You be the judge. I think so like I was mentioning earlier, I think there were some great setups, and there's a lot of things that are moving in the background. When the chief dies and Daniel sort of takes his position, but Daniel wants to be sort of a boots on the ground, not behind the desk kind of character. The guy that hates guns, when he dies, and then his partner or whatever that's in that same room takes his position. So there's a lot of nice moments of progressing things and things developing, so things don't feel so static. Or just so like, this is just the plot of like the mystery of Eve. There's other things happening, and I really appreciated that, because it really just gave a lot of life to all the characters, the world itself. Like there's lives outside of Aya, and it was cool. I was like, this is so well done. Like honestly, it felt, and this might be one of my crazier hot takes. Sondi, you ready for this?
Oh no. I'm already scared. My heart just sunk as soon as you said it.
Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2, I feel like have weaker characters and just development than what I'm seeing in this.
No, you're right.
I feel like there's just more like going on, more gears turning, more momentum. I was kind of surprised. I was not expecting to go into this liking how they're handling these characters, knowing their names, being interested. I just thought I was just gonna like the aesthetic of the game, and that's it.
Yeah,
but
you thought it was just gonna be just Aya and Daniel. You didn't think everybody was gonna be.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, now that you analog it into Resident Evil, that is true, because Resident Evil uses characters as a vehicle for you to experience the horrors of the mansion or Raccoon City or whatever's going on. And it's not until 3 or even 4 that you start getting that true, or like even the spinoff games, that you get the true characterization of those characters.
Ooh, there we go. Yeah.
Whereas Parasite Eve, I do agree. By the end of Parasite Eve, even Daniel jumping out of the helicopter, every time Aida gave me a charm, I never threw it away, because I was like, this is my guy. I can't throw it away.
Yeah.
The ending, like every single time, and like you said, like every time that they're driving in a car going somewhere and you get a little scene of them just talking, most games are afraid to do certain things like that, like especially for such a concise and experimental game like this, you wouldn't expect them to do what they're doing with the characters, and it does make you excited for Parasite Eve 2 if there is one. Well, at the time, if there was going to be a second game, you would be like, oh man, I can't wait to see what's happening with Daniel now that he's a chief and what's going on with that, or with Aya.
Some of the set pieces too were actually, to be a little corny here, were pretty like heart pounding. Specifically the hospital scene, right, where you're fighting that spider thing. You finally take it out, and then the fucking jet is coming towards you, and you're just like, where do I go? And you're like trying to
Oh, you go on a little window thing?
Yeah, and you're like, the little I don't know, like the elevator thing that window washers use. I was like, that was incredible. That was so cool for what this game is. Like, even though it feels stiff, and there's the PS1 sort of like there's a sort of inflexibility that that's sort of limited by the hardware, but it's still like, when you're in it, I felt like that was a cool moment, like almost like a version of something that you would see in Uncharted, but in the PS1 sort of like context. You know what I mean? It was that level of like,
it's one of those scenes where when this game eventually gets remade, you know that's one of those scenes that's going to be amplified a lot more because of a remake. When you see it in full 3D and seeing the velocity of the crane falling and stuff, it's just going to make it a lot better. Because when it falls in the game, you're just like, oh.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like it's going anywhere. But you imagine it. You're like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I get what they're trying to do.
Yeah, for sure.
The set piece too at the fuck, I just lost my train of thought of which set piece I wanted to talk about. That was also.
Are you talking about the Statue of Liberty?
Yes, there's that one, but also the very end, after you beat the 4 stages of the ultimate being, you have to obviously run through the entire ship as he's chasing you, and that was just cool. That's like a whole, again, like a Uncharted moment, right? Just like in PS1 era.
Yeah,
where it's like you're just running and it's like slowly kind of, but it was cool. I was like, this is, and then obviously I didn't finish the game, but I was watching the video of it, and I was like, I could imagine playing this and not knowing where the fuck to go, getting
how
stuck.
Tense that shit is.
Yeah, how tense as you just like beat 4 stages of this thing and just like fucking white knuckling it as you're, I don't know, Sean, what did you fucking think?
I mean, I don't know if you guys ever played the Spider-Man game on the PlayStation. It reminded me a lot at the very end of that game. There's a scene where you got to run away from like Carnage and Dr. Octopus who fuse together. And it's very similar to that, where it's just the whole end of the game is just running away from this thing that's going to wreck you, right? But this to me felt like one of the most survival horror parts of it, because I feel like those games kind of end with like a big fight, and then sometimes some sort of crazy thing pops out of nowhere and you got to escape like on a boat or something weird just away from that. I really like the idea of it. The only problem I have with it is just the fact that like you could take a wrong turn and then you're doing a 4-stage boss fight again. Like in any other game, even like in a modern game, they would have like a checkpoint just before then where like, I went the wrong way. Don't worry about it. There's like legitimate punishment for it. So I went from being like, oh, this is cool to, oh no. Now I'm afraid of everything. And maybe that fear is good. I like when games put a bit of fear into you where like you actually have a severe consequence for making a wrong move. But I love the idea of it. Maybe the execution.
Well, that sort of was the philosophy, I think, too, with something like Fear Effect, which we played 2 years ago.
Oh, yes. Rolling to save your life.
Yeah, it's like difficulty was part of the horror, like the terror, as you're like trying to figure things out and it's instant death and you're like, fuck this game.
If you mess up, if you stutter, you're like load times, reloads, like you gotta pay the piper for your sins here of not rolling at the right time.
Yeah, the punishment was brutal. I mentioned struggling with that last boss. When you die, you have to go back, watch about 3 minutes worth of cutscenes to get back to fighting the boss. And I'm just like, oh, this is so brutal. Like, can you imagine 1998 yourself sitting there trying to fucking
it's such a throwback. I can't tell you how many role-playing games, especially that had like I've messed up during it as a kid where I didn't level properly, got to a crazy hard boss fight and had to like completely like keep fighting it again and again and again, watching the same cutscenes. I think there was like 2 parts in FF10 specifically. Like I think the bit before like Yuna's wedding where you got onto the ship and have to fight. So I think that boss, I messed up the leveling. And I had to watch that cutscene every single time I fought that boss. Go like 3 minutes of them doing cool shit. And I'm like, I'm so sick of watching these people be fucking cool.
Yeah.
I'm so sick
As
of this.
I'm getting my ass beat. Yeah.
It's so old school. And I think that it was like, I had a bit of nostalgia being thrown back into it while doing this. But I still like can't believe that people used to put up with this thing.
Yeah.
Like, well. Yeah.
What do you think? Okay, let's just talk about like the background. Like why couldn't they add a skip button to those cutscenes? Is it a disc-based issue?
Nah, you gotta watch this.
Yeah, like what?
I legit think they're like, do you know how much money and time we put into this? You're gonna watch this, you know? Because like if you skip all these things, you're the runtime of our game is going down by about 4 hours, you know? Like some dude who's rented this is like, no man, you're renting it again. You ain't having it for 1 night. You're doing it for 2 nights.
Yeah, that's true. Or it could just be like such a simple oversight where they're like, well, we don't want people to accidentally skip the cutscene, you know? So let's just add
That's
button
true.
to skip it.
Because if I pressed start and I skipped a cutscene, I probably would have hated this game by accident.
Yeah.
No, not for real. Even like the simple things nowadays, like the opening, you know, every single logo that comes at the beginning. So many games don't let you skip those either. They might have like 4 or 5 of those things.
Yeah.
You know, I just think people didn't, because they weren't even really a thing until about this generation. Because when you booted up like a Super Nintendo game or an NES game, you're pretty much right in. Here you're just like, oh, they're gonna want to stay for the cutscenes. There's no reason they'd want to skip this, right? That'd be insane. Yeah, it's like adding a skip button to your video. Like, you don't want to skip the movie. Why would you want to do that?
They're playing this for the cutscenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, the story, I think, very strong. As we're talking about, the characters, strong. One of my favorite beats of the story is after the whole, like, Eve essentially just sweeps the whole fucking the precinct, and then there's like that mass evacuation from the city, and then you as Aya and Maeda and Daniel are like kind of scavenging through those fucking stores.
Yeah.
I was like, this is so cool. Like, it's just like deserted, but you're just going through picking up items. I was like, I love that shit.
Just
it's like the
a
Division
cigarette
where
on
you're
the
like alone.
side.
Yeah.
It feels very Division like, you know.
Yeah.
And I think this is what we mentioned about my idea of New York and snow. Like, everything I play is just like New York and snow. so I'm like, yeah, this is real New York.
Now think about it. Every time I've been to New York, it has snowed. Yeah.
No, it's true. See, it's true to life.
And
have you been in an abandoned, like, if you've been in like an abandoned store, gun shop, or like an old apartment, like I don't know whose apartment they were sitting in during that scene either. It's like a fire going on.
Yeah, wait, was that not?
Was it just like a random apartment? I thought that was just like a random like building that they just repurposed.
I think that was after the evacuation where they were just like chilling. It was weird.
Yeah, you're right. Totally missed that.
Yeah, because that's why I really liked about all the visual stuff, because it's really weird to get these kind of locations in a pre-rendered SquareSoft game at all, you know?
Right.
And it was really sweet to see.
All right, let's go to gameplay. Sondi, will go to you.
Yes, sir.
What do you got for us? What do you think?
I'm gonna start off nice before I get into the parts I don't like. But I love the battle system. The battle system actually made me want to. I have Vagrant Story on the PS3, PS1 classics, and it really, like, after beating this game, I almost was like, let me just boot up Vagrant Story now, because I love the battle system that much, and I wanted to see how it was expanded on in other titles. And you can probably elaborate on this more.
You were going to be very surprised when you play Vagrant Story. Yeah, I'll tell you that much.
Vagrant Story. I thought this game was gonna have Vagrant Story's battle system.
Yeah, I was like, Vagrant Story with guns.
Yeah, but it was
not that. Okay. But
wait, so that's your
Vagrant
positive
Story's
thing
battle
about
system.
No,
Vagrant
the
Story has a rhythm-based tapping system. You might be into that.
Let's go. That's all you had to say.
Yeah,
I'm booted up tonight. No, but the battle system, I like the the dodge, it felt kind of like a shmup a little bit sometimes, where it's like I'm waiting, so let me just dodge around and then position myself. And you can't just spam and be like, okay, I have my ATB up, let me just shoot my bullets. You have to time it. If you shoot 2 bullets at this monster and it dies in 1 bullet, you just wasted a bullet. It's not gonna auto target the next person, so you have to like strategically time, like, okay, I think this is almost dead, let me move to this next one. I like that system, as well as the way that guns felt different, even though they're not really different. But just like when you get your first machine gun that has random and you're shooting around, compared to when you get your rocket launcher and you shoot. Did you guys find the shotgun?
I found the shotgun. I actually didn't find the rocket launcher.
That was in the warehouse.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
why didn't I find these cool weapons? Me not going to a weapon store. I ain't going there.
Yeah, my dumbass had the shotgun and I was beefing it up, and then I fucked around and I accidentally used the tool and used the shotgun and like changed it onto a pistol. So I just took the rate of fire from the shotgun to a pistol and lost like everything at the end. And I was like, no.
God, yeah. The shotgun. First off, the rocket launchers look like shotguns, and then there was the actual rocket launcher that looked like a rocket launcher. It was very confusing to me at one point, because
they were like grenade launchers, because there was like the tranquilizer grenade launcher and then the ice grenade launcher. Yeah,
but they looked like. It was weird to me. I was like, I don't know if I ever got the shotgun, to be honest with you. I was using a grenade launcher as if it was a shotgun. But I jumped on my points.
It did feel very shotgunny. I think it's interesting that the game it effectively just has a universal ammo system for the most part. Yeah. So 1 round of a pistol is the same as 1 round of a grenade, which is really weird in the game. But I think
convenient.
The grenade launcher did really feel like, you only get maybe like 1 or 2 bullets per your attack, but it feels more powerful and impactful.
Yeah,
when you're using them.
Yeah, and then obviously the range, of each gun changed as well. How did you guys feel about, I guess, just sort of the explanation of the mechanics for the super tool and the tool and the upgrade system? How did you guys feel about all that?
I think when I tinkered around with it for a little bit, it made a bit of sense to me in that what you needed to do with them. I think the problem that I had, and this is something that could be said for like a lot of role-playing games, is that there are optimal ways to build things and to do things. And I don't know if the game necessarily gives you a heads up about, how you should be building certain things, or what you should be valuing for a weapon, or more importantly, how many tools you're going to get. Because I would pretty much always use a tool as soon as I got a tool, just to mess about and try new things with weapons. Like, I would see, oh, this gun has 2 rate of fire. What if I gave it 7 rate of fire? And even though 7 rate of fire sounds better, it doesn't necessarily mean it's better or it's going to work on that type of weapon, Yeah. So instead of doing, I think the optimal way to do things in this game is to basically just keep trying to up damage. Like, find perks that work for you and the weapon of your choosing. So I initially had a rifle for most of the game, and then towards the end I reverted back to like a pistol, which I was completely fine with using. But I spent way too many of my tools in this game just putting new crap onto the pistol to find out that I don't actually like that very much. Is 2 better than 3? It's pretty much the same. Do I need this bit of extra ammo or this? I should have just been saving it for damage and then waiting until I got there's 1 gun at the end that you get that has double command on it.
Yep, that's the same gun I used at the end.
Yeah.
That's easily the best command in the game, right? But my pistol was way stronger than that pistol, and I didn't have a tool to move it over. And I'm like, oh wow, if I had a known, or if I had done that. I got what their purposes were. I just had it if I went back into the game knowing what I know now, I would have played it completely different. But it's purely just the fact that if you can completely mismanage it enough to actually make the game almost unbeatable for you. I find that they probably could have done that a bit better, but that is very classic role-playing game stuff where it's just don't mess about with things. You might lose forever.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that you lose your gun. I think that's where my disdain for the system comes from, is that once you take something from a gun, that gun is just destroyed, gone from the ethosphere. There's not like a restock option, or oh, you can get this gun from rejunking it or anything. So like you, I had a gun. I was using a gun. Then I had a rifle for a majority of the game, and then I was beefing up that rifle, prepping up for the end game, and then I found that pistol, and I accidentally transferred not my bonus points, but just the rate of fire onto that pistol, and I lost all. I had like plus 30 on like a gun,
because that damage buff that you're meant to be basically carrying this one damage buff for the entire game and transferring it over to your weapons. You know, like that's your priority. And if you have a spare tool, or maybe I'll get this cool new ability that pops up. But like you, I focused abilities way too much and just
I think I use my bonus points all the time on buffing my ATB recharge rate.
I equally buffed my ATB and my item limit, and I think the item limit is another interesting thing. I think that kind of taught me that weapons and items are going to be expendable. I should be using my items and whatnot, but I'm very like a hoarder when it comes to those sort of games. I want to keep everything, so I had a hard time letting it go as well. I could have done it so much better. I botched so much in this game. I'm surprised they even finished it by the end. For sure. But I think like if this was a modern game, they would have done like lists of tutorials through this and whatnot. Like keep in mind, I didn't play this. I don't have the game physically. I like emulated it, so I've never read the manual for this game. And I'm sure it's way more in-depth in there. Or if you read a simple guide for the game. Even if you read a simple guide, someone would probably be like, first off, do not do this. All right. And then everything else would probably be okay.
Yeah. I read the manual because I was confused about what the difference between a super tool and a regular tool was. It doesn't explain it at all in the manual.
And then there's like there's a couple of systems I think that got in the way of each other. There's the tool, which as Sondi was explaining, you use to extract a specific parameter, you know, from an existing weapon, and then that weapon becomes it's gone forever, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a super tool, which allows you to take any piece of, you know, the parameter from that weapon, and it allows you to keep both weapons. And then there's also an upgrade system that allows you to give a weapon more slots, that I feel like was also a little bit undercooked or under-explained or underdeveloped or something, because
I never knew what it meant.
Yeah, at some point I think also the visual representation. So you have the gun, and then there's a box underneath that has all like the little icons, like ×3 rate of fire or whatever. And then there's like a little box that has a slash through it. And I didn't know if that meant that was an existing slot that I put something into, or if that was something I have to remove. Or so it was very confusing, and it wasn't explained anywhere.
I wasted every single one of those.
And then at some point too, you're getting these which I did like the whole precinct, the like, I guess, what is it, gun safety, and what are you given, these certificates or something to upgrade?
Which
I thought was very clever. But then it switches to they're permits. You're given permits. And then you're given cards at some point, which I only ever got one, and I just didn't understand, like, where else are they? And then there's like a collection of cards. I was like, I don't understand what's going on here.
It's got to be a new Game Plus thing. It's got to be.
There's like, I mean, having looked into the game, like with the new Game Plus stuff, like even looking at like the game's ultimate weapons. I don't know if you know the ultimate weapon quests in this game. Did you guys ever come across an item called junk? You might have seen it in like occasionally enemies drop it. I think I might have seen about 10 pieces of junk in game. Yeah. Like to get one of the ultimate weapons, you have to go to the police guy in the precinct. You need to go down to the weapons guy and you need to give him 300 pieces of junk, which you have to grind for a very long time to get. And then you can pick one of 5 ultimate weapons, which is just like a pistol, a rifle, machine gun, shotgun, or grenade launcher. But like you're looking at like maybe like 300 battles minimum in like I think one area in the museum, and that's just to get one weapon, and that's a completely separate thing altogether that's never told you. You're just getting an item called junk that you think takes up an item slot in your inventory, whereas you're meant to be
And I've
stocking those
thrown it
bad
away
boys up.
numerous times. Like, get this junk out of
Yeah,
here.
you're like, I don't need that, and that's like if you go back to him, he's like, oh, you got some junk, and
Yeah, I'll
but you gotta give him
discard
like
junk. Yeah.
you got to give him like 300 pieces of junk to get that. And that's like you guys, when I played through it one time, I think I maybe got one super tool. I think I got maybe one card and I used it on one weapon. And I like in the grand scheme of things, that was a pretty powerful upgrade that I completely wasted on a bad gun because I didn't understand its, I think a lot of that stuff to me, it feels like it's built to be taken advantage of in New Game Plus. Like, if you know what this is, you can probably make yourself very overpowered. And I get the feeling if you spec yourself appropriately, you can probably be very strong in this game pretty easily. Because there's not like a lot of weapons and there's not like a lot of magic. Most of your damage is going to come from your guns.
Yeah.
So once you New Game Plus, it'd be like, wow, well, now I have the forbidden knowledge. And now I know to do all this stuff. And you're probably
ignore all these guns and just throw them in the safe because I know this is the one gun I want to maximize. So I can use all my BP on maximizing the damage on that instead of using it on ATB to shoot faster.
Yeah, for sure.
How often did you guys use the Parasite Eve powers aside from the obvious haste and heal? Did you guys use any of those other ones?
I use barrier every battle. As soon as it starts, I would immediately use barrier and then I would fight.
Really?
Yes, every single time. Either that or haste.
Yeah, I feel like some are very situational. Like with most magic spells, I use like, get rid of poison and maybe I use slow or confuse once or twice just to check them out. But I think considering all the things that they give you, there are like, you're just going to go to your heal spells. You'll use heal 1, heal 2, heal 3 a lot. I don't think I ever used the regen power. I don't think I ever used the full heal, which is like all of your health. And
oh yeah, I definitely use
at that point. Because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it gives you the last 3 abilities pretty close together.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get liberate, you're, at least in my mind, I was like, I should always try to be use liberate.
Yeah.
Whenever possible. So it was pretty much just haste is good, heal is good, otherwise liberate. I think before then I tried to use energy shot a lot, but that was just like to try finish a round. There's a lot of stuff in there that's just, I felt kind of inconsequential. It's like standard spell stuff.
Yeah.
And there's not a huge roster that you get, but it was nice. It was a nice selection. It felt like a little bit like a kind of like a pick and mix or a tasty like starter plate of fantasy based spells. You got a little bit, you got a limit break, you got a heal, you got a regen. Don't worry too much about it.
Yeah. Barriers saved my life a lot of the times. I think that's probably why not until like the final boss, because you can't really spam barrier as much because they will break through. I think barrier isn't like a full like time limit of you're immune from this time. It's like a shield essentially for
as long as you have what is it, PP or MP or whichever it is, PE, as long as you have something in that bar that's going to go before your health.
Yeah. And
which is why that's actually why I didn't use it, was because it essentially took me like it takes you out of the using any future EP or PE because you're using it to protect yourself. And I was like, I need this shit to heal, nigga. I need this shit.
That's why I was like,
my enemies.
That's why I was so stocked up on healing items. I was like, I'll just use barrier and then I'll kill it before it can attack me. And if I need to heal, I'll just use a medicine and then kill another monster and get another medicine real quick off of it.
Yeah. I think like in any other role playing game, I'd be very inclined to use like a protect or a shell or a spell like that. It's just with this one, I think what's interesting about the gameplay is that there's always this thought in your head where I'm like, I just won't get hit. I'll dodge all the attacks that come at me. I don't need to be protected when I can walk out of the way. And I think as much as I like the fact that you can, like, one thing that I really love about this game's combat, and I like it in any role-playing game, even if it's turn-based, is where they give you something to do while you're doing the turn-based combat. I don't know if you guys have played Lost Odyssey. There's like a ring system on every auto attack there where you have to time the button. Shadow Hearts has the wheel system where every attack you have to hit it. I feel like Parasite Eve is like a weird split off of that, where it's kind of turn-based. But so much of the combat is like in between is dynamic. You're moving around. You're physically trying to dodge things. I think, like you said, bullet hell. Some of it feels a bit bullet helly, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing with the magic. Almost all of my magic was just to try supplement how bad I was at moving away from people's things. But other than that, yeah, it's a fun little system that they got
Liberate,
going.
I thought was, I wish you got it sooner. I wish you got to spend some more time with some of these powers, because I mean, Liberate is insane, and you
cool,
only get
right?
to use it for like the last of it, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's it, huh? I mean,
Yeah.
unless you do a new game plus, do you get all those powers still?
I believe
I
you
think
hang
so.
on to it. The new game's a bit weird in this one, where that like you have to still level up again, but I think you get to keep a lot of what you have. I've read if you're trying to fully complete Parasite Eve, you'll need to play through it a couple of times, because they have this endgame dungeon, the Chrysler building.
Right, yeah,
I don't know if you know about it. It's like 100 floors, randomized,
Crazy.
incredibly difficult. From what I've told, it's an awful experience to get to the end of it. And then there's an ultra boss at the end of it, which you legit got to be like level 99, fully maxed out. Like, it's got insane amounts of health even compared to the final boss.
Yeah.
So I think all of that stuff, like, you'll probably be able to get the most out of it. But I think for a one playthrough, you get a little bit of time with everything before you're quickly moved on to the next rotation of things you're going to use. You know, like, as soon as you get haste, you're a haste gal for life. I and haste are best friends forever.
And that makes more sense why like gun customization was the way it was, because if they're expecting you to play multiple times, and especially play through a ever engrossing giant in-game dungeon, it's probably a bunch of tools in there. It's probably a bunch of other hidden guns that we've never seen in there as well, and armors and stuff. So they probably expect if you're really liking the system and going deep into it, you're going to have your dream gun, you're going to have your dream armor, and you're going to be trying to build yourself up like a Muso game.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it all comes back to
It all
Muso.
comes back to Muso and Taken 2. What's actually interesting is that the whole, you could almost look at it as like the tower, the Chrysler building, is sort of like the main game, and then the story mode is the tutorial, just to teach you all the mechanics. And then, because that's 100 level, that's like probably more gameplay than the main story, I would imagine.
I'm gonna say that makes me actually interested to go back and actually be the game
for sure.
to play it.
And like I think the funny thing is, even before I really knew about Parasite Eve or much of like what the gameplay was, I do remember like in a podcast, like the infamous stories of the Chrysler building in Parasite Eve and how insanely difficult it is. Like, if you guys remember I don't know if you guys got lost in the sewer, where you kind of have these long paths to go down, and some of them are dead ends and whatnot.
Yeah.
I hear the Chrysler building is like a giant version of that, over 100 floors, where you get, I think, like every 10 floors you get a save spot. It's kind of Persona 3-ish. You go up a few floors and you get like a rest spot for it. But yeah, I do like the fact that they keep like an alternate ending at the top of the tower, though. Like, you get to fight a new final boss with an alternate ending to it, which I'm not sure is canon or not. I don't believe it is, but it's like, I don't personally think, I love the gameplay in Parasite Eve, but I personally don't think I would get an extra playthrough out of it or multiple playthroughs, especially considering you can't skip the cutscenes and things like that. Like, you got to keep that in mind when you're playing it.
Yeah.
But I like that stuff is there. If you really like that game and you really want to keep playing it, it can kind of keep going over, and you get this really big payoff at the end. Well, I hope it's a big payoff. I don't know what it's like. It's gonna be awful. Yeah.
We'll say it in post and be like, it's not.
What's interesting is sort of how almost like the economics of making games and, you know, designing how long they'll be and how long you want people to be engaged with them. It's interesting how that's sort of changed over time, because, you know, you mentioned a couple of times like, oh, like if you're renting it, you know, you'll not just beat it in a weekend, you'll have to rent it again, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, that money goes somewhere, obviously. Whereas now we don't really have like the whole renting thing, so maybe some of those philosophies would be different, maybe not. You know, case in point with Persona 3 and 5. I think 4 had like a dungeon.
4 had gold. 4 had golden, or I think, where it has like, well, did 4 have
I'm trying
an
to think
end
if
game kind of thing?
I didn't play all the way through 4, so I don't know if there was
I know
like
3
that,
for
but
sure has a, like, even with the answer too, you can be stuck in there for a good year. on just Persona 3.
Fez is insane.
Yeah.
Bro, it's
And
a lot on.
obviously they included that within the main story and the gameplay, so you're still like it's integrated better as opposed to you have to beat the main story, then you get access to Tartarus. Is that what it was called, right?
Yeah, Tartarus. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of interesting how that sort of stuff played out. We're like, okay, let's add. We want Parasite Eve to have that end game, that sort of replayability essentially. So let's add this really meaty sort of just system or this gameplay mode at the end to give players incentive to go back, and all this. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting because I mean, am I gonna go back? I haven't beat the game. I can't beat this boss, so I'm locked out of the content unless I
You thug it out.
Yeah, I'm just like,
Yeah.
fuck, okay. But I don't know. It's just kind of interesting how that all works and how they decide. I mean, do you guys think the game would have been better if it had that gameplay mode, like at the menu, like, where it says like continue?
Oh, like how Final Fantasy 12 has like trial mode separated?
Yeah, just like boom. Yeah, you just like jump in.
Possibly. And you do bring up a good point by mentioning, because I do have to think about it in the time that maybe some developers were making games and the idea of this is a rental, or I expect people to like not buy this game, they'll just rent it and stuff like that. Like I think about a lot of the games that we played during the season, like Dirge, Musashi, even No More Heroes. I did rent No More Heroes actually. Operation Raccoon City. These are games you could beat in a rental, bring it back and be like, all right, cool, I'm good. That was great.
Yeah.
That was I enjoyed that. And I don't know. I feel like I have to play Parasite Eve 2 first before I quantify this question, because Parasite Eve 2 might have those systems to where they go, like the gun customization might be better. They might have a better in-game area dungeon for you to expand and do stuff like that. But at least, yeah, I agree with Parasite Eve. If I was to go back and play this game again, I probably would just load up the same save, beat the final boss real quick, and then I'm gonna run through the game again and try to do the Chrysler Tower and give up after a while and go back and fight the original boss. Like I'll probably just play until I get mad and then stop. I don't think it would be good to have it as a separate option, because then it would give it's kind of like Armored Core, like the original Armored Cores, how it has the arena as a separate mode. It can kind of limit you because you think that, because I feel like a lot of the times with Armored Core, especially, the main meat and fun of the game is playing the story mode and the missions compared to playing the arena. Like for me, I didn't really care for playing the arena, even though it's more difficult per se and stuff like that. And you can still play through essentially the whole game and still have just as much fun playing the arena mode. It's just not the same experience though, I would say.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think the one thing that I would take away from this is that I feel for like, in terms of the survival horror-esque elements of it, because they definitely take some inspiration from kind of how big horror was during that era. But if you compare this to something like a Resident Evil, which anytime I beat a Resident Evil game, I almost always feel compelled to play through it again, because it gives you this sort of incentive with like, here's how quickly you beat it, here's your ranking, there's these little extras you can unlock if you do it. I feel like the Chrysler section as a whole, I think it's really cool in concept, but I do feel like it's something that just isn't necessarily balanced for you to like go back and entirely play the game again for if you want to. Because like I said, from what I gather, you need to actually beat the Chrysler Tower, you need to beat the game a lot to get to level 99, Like you have to beat this game quite a bit. So 100 floors of what is remotely the same thing with maybe a few extra items sprinkled in doesn't really entice me to come back and do it. But I think if they were to like remake the game and maybe have the Chrysler Tower be almost like a roguelike kind of deal, where you can go in and like it's a randomized thing every time, you get different weapons and items, and you kind of have to play with your items and maybe mix tools on the fly to try and make good combinations. I think that would work really well. Yes. So I like the concept. I just think they probably could have executed on it a little bit better. And well, once again, I haven't fully played Parasite Eve 2, so I know kind of the gist of what the differences in Parasite Eve 2 are, and I'll leave you to play it yourself to figure out and find out what they are. But I think it's something they could have definitely expanded on and improved upon as the series went on. I hope they did anyway.
I think with the maybe integrating the Chrysler building into the gameplay, or I'm sorry, into the story, like the main story itself. So, I was mentioning earlier in the podcast when Parasite Eve, when Aya goes to the goes to that window and she sees the Chrysler building and it's like lighting up. It'd be cool if after that level, it's like, oh, this is open to you now. Now you can go and fuck around if you want to. I think you'd have to rebalance. Maybe
like treating it like a coliseum of the sorts, like out in JRPGs.
Like even you could even see it, and they could have like a little warning outside or something, like just telling you this is for expert players. You can still go in and see it and get a taste of it and be like, oh well. I think the problem though is, the way everybody thinks gamers are idiots. You'd probably have someone who's like, I can't beat the goddamn Chrysler Tower. I don't think you can. I don't think you can have it. Like, the way they're like, we have to put yellow on shit so people know where to go in games. We need to tell you very carefully to how to jump over stuff. I feel like if you put this big ominous entity there that like you can't beat unless you specifically tell people you can't beat that, someone's gonna get stuck in there forever trying to beat the game. And instead of going to Chinatown or something, just to progress. But I like that it's there. I like that it's there for sure.
Yeah, I want to say that the gameplay overall is solid, but there are some sort of maybe some miscommunications to the player. Some things aren't fully explained that really rob your enjoyment, your overall enjoyment of like really like the gameplay is almost addicting. Like it's almost clear, and maybe that could be our modern sensibilities, our brains, like, trying to interpret something that was done, years ago.
I feel like though, this is also like a very hindsight game where your second playthrough will probably feel a lot more comfortable than your first playthrough. Because in hindsight, like for in the entirety of disc one, I really didn't know what BP was, or even what I was doing with gun customization. But if I knew those when I was playing earlier, I probably would have made better choices and got along better. It's the same thing. Like once I get that second playthrough, the game will feel and the systems will probably work around itself better because I understand them now, even though the manual is the most cryptic thing I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
Sean, what did you think? Just real quick, the menus. There's a shit ton of options, and there's always in these types of games, especially Square's games, they have this ability to change the color of the menu boxes. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, they have customization options for them, which is I think them and Pokemon do it. That's their thing.
Like, why? I just never understood. I'm like, why would anybody want to customize?
I always change it to black.
Do you?
You just put it on dark mode.
Yeah, I always put it on black, or I put it on like dark blue, kind of get that old Final Fantasy aesthetic.
That's the classic.
Yeah.
How did you guys find ammo, by the way? Did you ever feel like you struggled with ammo stocks threat the game?
Never. I had like 400 ammo at like all times. I don't know why, but to be fair, I was using like one particular rifle, so it was just like two-shotting every two or three-shotting everything. And by the time that I actually was like, hold on, I'm struggling with ammo, it was right before you do like the second phase of the final boss, and they're like, all right, here's a bunch of medicine, here's a bunch of ammo.
I straight up ran out of ammo at 2 points in the game, and this was also down to me not knowing how to use weapons properly, because I made an assault rifle with a 7 rate of fire, and I don't know if you guys noticed with rate of fire, like rate of fire makes you fire more bullets, but it also makes your bullets do less damage. So if you have like 2 and 3, it's technically similar levels of damage, but you're technically stunning an enemy longer, right? And if you have 7 bullets on a rifle, you're just standing there shooting for ages. You get hit with so much shit. Never use a 7 round rifle. It's terrible. But like I was also using up like 7 rounds of ammo on a single turn of shooting an enemy, doing about like 10 damage. It was just draining my ammo, you know?
Rate of
you
fire
could use one bullet with You could use 1 bullet with a grenade and do the same damage with 7 bullets from a thing. That's why I eventually found like 2 or 3 bullets on a pistol was like optimal for what I wanted. I feel like but like simply using that rifle and thinking more bullets equals more damage, I just had no ammo for large portions of this game. You know, like it's funny how it's indifference to you, where you're like, I've got 400 bullets, and me like in the museum being like, please drop 15 rounds. I'm gonna die if you don't drop 15 rounds.
Okay, so this is actually funny. This is so funny because I also had a similar issue where I went into the hospital rooftop fight with like 20 ammo.
Oh my goodness!
And I was stuck. I was like, fuck, what am I gonna do? You know, and it turns out that you do get a club 2 where you could fucking hit enemies.
Oh yeah, I love club. Yeah,
and you can steal ammo from them. Not every
is that what it does?
Oh yeah, the club
I never
2
knew
it
that.
steals.
Yeah.
I knew I had a thing on it. I didn't know what it meant. Remember the follow me. I don't know what it meant. I was like, what even is that? Club 2? Oh, I ain't used the club.
It's so hard to
club?
use. You know, you really have to like be beefed up as far as your defense and all that. But you get ammo that way. Also, Sondi told me that if you go back to the precinct at any given point, there's a chest right next to like the main guy. Yeah, and there's 30 ammo sitting in there, and there's also medicine.
Every single time I ran low on the ammo, I thought to myself, I probably should have went back to the precinct for something, right?
Oh yeah, I went back to the precinct every time.
This is why I finished the game in 10 hours, because there's bits where you're like, oh, you want to go back and use a super tool? I'm like, no, we're going to the next place. Need any ammo? Nah, I got like 50 bullets. That's enough, right? It's not enough. It's never enough.
Yeah, you never have a good judge of how much ammo you need. Like it's sort of hard. I ended up with about 800 ammo at the end of the beginning of the 4-stage boss at the end. That didn't help, obviously. I still can't beat the boss with regardless of how much ammo I have. But it was just it's really frustrating. So
yeah, but I think it's funny how that can be different for other people, because like I struggled with ammo, but also like just managed to kill the boss with like 50 bullets. Insane. I think I had like very very lucky. I messed up, but I messed up just enough to be okay.
Lastly, I sort of want to talk about the strangeness to include Maeda's good luck charms, and they're
fucking like, useless. They don't do anything.
It's insane how, if you look at like, you know, the Parasite Eve communities, there's people who have tried runs where they use each individual one to see if like you get an extra drop rate, or you get you get higher drop rates, or maybe you get a revive, you know. And there's 4 of them he gives you, or 3 of them. One's like a good luck, one's like an extra good luck. So it's just like, what are these mysterious fucking items?
It is interesting reading like the old forum posts from like 2002. Like, what do the charms do? Do they? And then people are like, yeah, it revived me during the final boss.
Yeah.
It's like all this internet hearsay.
Did you guys find that? Well, I mean, did you guys keep them for one? And did you find that they did anything?
I think from what I read, right, because at the end of the game, I remember looking this up, I think, and I found that I don't think they're one of the few items you can't discard. So I think once you get them, they take up a permanent slot. They're just there, you know, because they're integral to the story. And I don't know if it's maybe like a runoff of the Parasite Eve book or something. Maybe there's something within there where like Lucky Charms relate to it or whichever. Or if it's even just like a long play to where like he's about to give you the final charm and you're like, oh man, not this guy again, this goddamn charms. And Daniel cuts him off and he's like, all right, if you don't want my charm, don't worry about it. And then he's on the helicopter and he's like, wow, I wish I gave Aya these bullets I made. You know?
Yeah, I think that is the play.
Maybe it's a really long bit, which results in Daniel exploding into flames, flying out of a helicopter, which like, if that's what they were going for, fantastic. But as far as I know, I don't believe those items do anything. Although I did inexplicably revive in the last fight with me thinking I didn't have a revive. So that might have been something. Or maybe I just did have a revive. I don't know. I don't sort my items.
Same here. Yeah. I think I revived and I didn't. I mean, you have to keep track of what items you have. And I don't think I had a revive and I revived. But I don't know which good luck charm revived me.
Or if it did revive you. What if you just revived?
Who even knows? Because it's crazy. Even sorting the items and that's a bit weird. Like the sort button to like change your things. So maybe I did have a revive. I don't know what it is, but I appreciate Maeda's little lucky charms and how like I just like a dude trying to give you useless stuff. Take this, you'll need it, and it's like, oh, bro, give me a voodoo doll again. I don't need this.
Yeah, one of those things where I think in modern games you would definitely think like this is absolutely important, and it probably
goes into your key item slot.
Weapon.
The key items, yeah.
And like this is just like I mean, this isn't a game where you can pick up like 80 pieces of junk and they're like the most important item in the game. That's not telling you. So
that's true.
Who knows?
Yeah. So overall, what do you guys feel? Would you recommend Parasite Eve? Do you guys think that this is something that everybody should have in their collection of PS1 or retro titles? What are you guys feeling?
Yes. This is one of those games I feel, even if you're somebody like me that isn't like a pre-PlayStation 2 aficionado, I would still say pick up this game just for the novelty of it. It's first of all, it was supposed to be Final Fantasy VII, and they repurposed and rearranged it, and it's a sequel to a book. Like that's the story behind it's already weird enough along the fact that Square Enix in its prime made a shooting modern setting JRPG. That's so strange. And it's good. It's a great game, great soundtrack, great graphics, great gameplay. It's a great game.
Yeah, for sure. It's a combination of horror, classic role playing, and like cheesy AAA 90s big budget action movie. It's like one of the shorter Square games that I've played, but I feel like they've condensed all these elements together to make a game that feels very unlike anything they've made, even in the same series. And I don't like, despite Vagrant Story having some similarities in its battle system, I say some very loosely, it's literally just that sphere that appears. It's the only thing that's similar.
Oh, no.
I feel like it's a very unique game as it is. It's kind of one of a kind. I don't think anybody's really done something very similar to what it is. And while I don't think it's perfect in every aspect of it, I think it's a miraculously good game for what they attempted to do. It's what I would call an 8 out of 10 that you must play. You know, it's got problems, but I don't think I've ever come across anybody who's played this game who hasn't had like a really fun experience with it to some extent. It's just that interesting and unique, and I'm sad that it took me so long to play it, but I get the hype now for sure.
I don't know anybody who's played this game, to be honest with you, in real life.
Just us three?
Or otherwise. Yeah, we're the only people that I know.
It's honestly its stock is rising. I feel like from what I've seen, like once again as a European, none of us has played Parasite Eve. We just didn't know what it was unless you imported it. And now I think because we're in this era now where I think a lot of these older PlayStation games are starting to get their dues. You start getting dudes making 3-hour videos on them, you know. I'm part of the problem, but it's I think you're going to start seeing these other games that aren't your Final Fantasies, aren't your like your Chrono Triggers, kind of getting their day in the sun and people appreciating them. And I think especially nowadays, people have a lot of love for horror. I think people really care about survival horror these days. I think a lot of people have big nostalgia for Resident Evil, and people have big nostalgia for Silent Hill. And I think if you tell someone, hey, did you know Square made a horror game with like a lot of the Final Fantasy team, and it's kind of like Final Fantasy meets horror meets buddy cop drama, people are like, whoa, okay. You know?
Now next people are going to be saying Galarians is a classic.
What do you got against Psychic Ash and his Nakon Tills?
Galarians.
That's a boater game. I rented Galarian Ash, the second game. I rented that one as a kid, and it gave me nightmares.
Oh, it's
weird.
And
I returned it. I was like, Mom, I can't do this. Because I just saw Anime Guy on the cover. I was like, Mom, Anime Guy, let me get this.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, fuck this, Mom. What is this shit?
Yeah.
It's a scary game.
It is weird.
That's all I have. Well, actually, do you guys think there will be a Parasite Eve remake? You guys feel that in your bones?
Yes,
on the
in
horizon?
my bones. Just like there will be a Dirge remake, there will be a Parasite Eve remake.
You think soon? You think what are you feeling?
I think some people have like a lot of the hot topic seems to come in relation to the licensing of Parasite Eve, because one of the interesting things about it is that this is like one of the few Square properties that Square didn't create themselves from scratch. They're effectively working off of somebody else's property. And I think a lot of the time people used to discuss, there's issues with the licensing, and that's why it's called The Third Birthday. From what I gather, that's not the case at all. I think if they wanted to call something Parasite Eve, it's not like it's very expensive to pick up the rights to it. I think it's mostly famous because of the game, at least in the Western world anyway. And as I said, I think its stock is continuing to rise. I think more people are paying attention to it. We're going to look for people wanting just even like remasters or like re-releases of like the trilogy together. And out of all the Square games that are out there and maybe deserving of a remake, I feel like this is probably the best one they could choose. I think they could do the most cool things with it. I think they could modernize it very well and still keep it like very true to what it is and make a really fun modern game. I mean, we've probably all played a lot of Square games out there, but even for me, even if there's ones that I might prefer more, I still think this is the best candidate for a modern treatment.
I don't know why I'm imagining a Resonance of Fate style, like
literally,
RPG
like you could do it exactly like that. I'm just imagining Resident Evil, but with Borderlands gun numbers popping up when you shoot stuff.
Like straight, like backflipping off a scorpion, firing off bullets in the air.
Yeah,
I can see her having a cover, like shooting out. I can see it all. Just it works, even with the set pieces, everything other than the grotesqueness of it. I can see it all being put into place compared to like another game like Vagrant Story, for example. I can't see them remaking that, or Xenogears or anything.
Those games are so like intrinsically. I think Xenogears and Vagrant are so like tied to being a classic PlayStation role-playing game. I know specifically Vagrant Story is very weird. It's very heavily, its visuals are very much tied to being a PlayStation game, and I don't think Square are too interested in revisiting any of Yasumi Matsuno's work. I don't think they're looking to do stuff with like Ivalice or Vagrant Story or FF12 and that kind of thing. They're very much like, we want to continue our Nomura, our big hitters, our Final Fantasies. And like, keep in mind, Nomura is still heavily involved with Parasite Eve, the character designs and whatnot. It's definitely got potential, and I think, if they feel like bringing in a cool horror experience and wanting to make a sweet looking New York City in the snow, if they want to just make The Division, they're welcome to.
Just take The Division and Resonance of Fate and then just mash the two. Parasite Eve. There you go.
Welcome to and looks, and every Parasite Eve game has been weird and different, so why not continue the trend and just what we're trying to say is bring back Resonance of Fate.
That's how we're trying.
I want to see 3 people doing cool stuff with guns in a steampunk world with eyebrow.
It's on the list.
All right, well, Sean, it was great having you for another episode of Back of the Rack. PS1 is, and I mean, wait, Sondi, have we done another PS1 title since Fear Effect?
No, this is the only one. We were going to do a Kuji, but we had to call
there was a listen. Spoiler: I'm playing a Kuji for like the next video I'm doing, doing the wheel videos. I'm super excited.
A Kuji is the one. My dad played a Kuji. He played a Kuji and Shadow Man in front of me. I don't know why he played this in front of like a 4-year-old, but
wow, you remember that? Holy
I
shit.
remember. That's why I love Shadow Man so much, is because I remember watching that, Ocarina of Time, and Akuji, and I was just like, wow, what is this shit? I like this kind of game. I'm cool with watching this, Dad, until he eventually got me a GameCube, and I was like, okay, I can play The Hobbit, I guess. It's kind of like these games.
Oh yeah, The Hobbit. That's
so man.
Fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Akuji. I think I from what I gather, it's literally just Gex with a voodoo man, which sounds like a more adult Gex, which sounds like my perfect game, really. So excited for that.
Yeah,
but thanks so much for having me on, guys. It's always a pleasure to be here. If you ever got a PS1 game in the future, hit me up. I'm always happy to chat about.
We're gonna switch it up. I'm gonna bring you in for a PlayStation 3 game next.
Oh, I had one of them too, believe it or not. It's like yeah, I'm the PlayStation 1 guy, but I have played like everything else ever. So I think we're okay. So yeah, just tap me in when you need a third talking head to take up too much of your time.
I didn't even think about that you I just consider like you've only played PS1 games, but I never thought to include you on a non PS1 game episode.
Look, I just a long time ago decided that that's going to be my brand. Even if I want to talk about like something else, it's not important. That's not the brand, man.
It'll be like it'll be off brand. It's like us playing a Super Nintendo game. It'll be like, what?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it'll be like, yeah, exactly. Considering we don't own any, like the console or any of the cartridges, so
I actually
it's
have
okay.
NES
There's been people talking about the Super Nintendo on the internet for too long, for too many years.
That's what I would say.
There's nothing new to find.
All right, yeah, it was great having you. This episode, happy holidays to everybody out there, because this will probably go live in middle December, Sondi.
Yeah, like probably right before Christmas. So yeah, this is
like
your Christmas episode.
This is your Christmas episode. Maybe we'll make it look Christmassy or something. Have a little tree superimposed,
a little wreath
in the corner.
If you want to give me like Rudolph's red nose for this entire thing,
we'll animate just Santa hats on all of us. So,
that'd be cool.
But yeah, it was great having you. We'll have to do this again soon, guys. This is also the last episode of season 3. So the next episode after this will be our Back of the Rack awards. So that'll be exciting. Look forward to that. That'll be coming out, I don't know, probably
before the year ends.
Yeah, before, I would say around New Year's, probably, like maybe the last day. Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, but anyways, thank you guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube nonsense. Follow Sean if you already haven't. I'm sure people who are watching this aren't already or are already subscribed to you, so I don't even know.
The algorithm's gonna get you eventually. If you're not subscribed to me, I'm gonna make the algorithm find me, and then by proxy find you guys, and we're all gonna benefit. We're all here to help the homies.
Funny story, I never realized that you were the one that uploaded the PS1 mix.
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize that shit until I have like a whole like playlist of mixes, and the other day I was listening to it and I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck?
There so many people find me through those, believe it or not. The problem is now I think I'm at the point where I'm seeing other people make PS1 mixes and like, oh, these guys are way better than me. I'm just gonna leave them to it for now. But I'll make another one around Christmas for people. I keep getting questions like, when are you making a mix? I'm like, oh, it's okay. I'll put some music together. Don't worry. But thanks for checking those out.
You're a part of the Back of the Rack universe, so absolutely, we put little Easter egg. We we're like the MCU where we do little cameos in each other's things, and it builds up to this ultimate event, Back of the Rack Secret Wars or something like that.
Back of the Rack.
Oh, for sure. Oh no, for sure. I'll squeeze you guys into a video someday. I'll make it work. I have enough time. I get enough comments. I get so many comments about you didn't put your cats in the video enough. I'm like, oh, come on. Every time I point a camera at them, they run away. I'm like, the internet loves you. You don't understand.
They want you, not me.
Yeah,
ever since I won the wheel, I've been happy as hell. Like, I'm good.
Oh yeah,
I'm
you got the slap happy treatment. Yeah, that was.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
People like that one.
Yeah, I put slap happy rhythm fight. I forget the slap happy
rhythm busters. Yeah, I was like, oh, there's a rhythm fighting game. You're like, oh, put that on, and then it worked out. I think Benji, I think you got like Danger Girl. I think I asked you after we did the last episode.
Oh, that's
like,
right.
Pick a game and you're like, Danger Girl. Yeah, that's still incoming. People. There's more than one Danger Girl fan out there. So
keep in mind, I've never played the game. I just like, it was one of those games that I saw and I was like, yeah, I want him to play this. So
no, it's a game you'll want to watch somebody else play. I'll put it that way.
All right, Sean. Well, you have a good night. Sondi, you have a good one. Everyone out there watching, you have also a good one. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever the fucking thing is.